Over the clear skies of Daytona Beach, Florida, we welcome you to the very first race in Season 5 of the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series and the Triple M Pulling Live 250 live from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. Kenneth Bueno, Ian Fisher on the call. We apologize for starting a little bit late. Had some difficulties on our end, but fortunately we are on the grid, ready to get things started in just a couple of moments. Ian, of course, a clean slate for every single driver tonight. We had a couple of qualifiers or clash a couple of weeks back. Now we get to set things here at Daytona for the first race.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to get the season kicked off, hopefully on the right foot for all these drivers. I know Chris Simon, last year's winner, is going to be looking for a repeat for this season. Had the only points race win last year at Daytona, but we're about to go green here, Kevin, so let's get this season started.
Two Chevrolets on the front row. Zach Hardwick in the 24. Christopher Blanchard in the 16. Pace truck already well off and away in the pit road. Green flag in the air for 100 laps in the Triple M Pulling Truck Series and the Triple M Pulling 250. A clean start through turns 1 and 2 already. Hardwick trying to hold on to the inside. Blanchard already with a big shove there. Lucas Whitehead in the 88 giving him the shove to give him the race lead on the back straightaway. The super stretch in, and of course, opening laps. Everybody trying to get their opening jitters through, and maybe not so much here for the drivers in the front. They're already trying to tangle as they enter turn 3.
No, but you bring up a good point. You don't want to get too aggressive early in a long race like this. We got 100 laps here tonight at Daytona, so none of these drivers want to make a move that's going to end their race on lap 1. So right now, it's just kind of finding your draft partners, getting in a line that you think is going to work for you, and that's what I'm looking forward to look at for the next couple of laps here, Kenneth, is seeing which lane is going to get the advantage and which one's going to start pushing up to the front.
And we'll see that, of course, in the rest of the laps. And we do have an interesting format tonight. There are 3 stages here in this Triple M Pulling 250. We'll have our opening stage, 25 laps hard cut, and then we'll go another 25 laps at halfway. Lap 50 will be the conclusion of stage 2 before we will basically run the race all the way to the finish, if we can, under green to lap 100. And, of course, our scenic journey through the checkered flag. Christopher Blanchard already taking charge up in front. Tyler Dittmer, though, in the 34. Trying to get a push here. This is from Raul Mesa in the 37. The 2 trucks trying to work together up at the top lane, but so far, no success. Only 3 trucks there up at the top, so that's really the only sparsity we're seeing up for a move in the race lead. But of course, this is a long race, Ian. You don't really want to extend your hand out too early. And right now, we're going to talk about a lot of the bigger things when it comes down to super speedway racing. Of course, that is making friends, earning your respect on the racetrack as you ride on board with Dittmer's number 34 getting a huge run out of turn 2, and it may be a good enough run to get him to the race lead. Indeed it will, as Blanchard and company will fall back, but this is all going to be about learning your limits and learning who you can work with and who maybe you may not be able to work with too well. It looks like Dittmer and Mesa working very well together as they take over first and second.
Yeah, and we saw this all night long in the clash as well a few weeks back, that Meza was able to get into that P2 spot, and whatever line that he was commandeering seemed to be the line to go with, and was able to push whoever was in front of him up to the eventual race lead. But whenever he got in front of the pack, it seemed like there was something wrong, maybe some damage or something like that with his truck. He wasn't able to maintain the lead, but he was pushing people all over the racetrack all night long.
And so everyone's single file right now, of course, with Dittmer taking over the race lead. Mesa holding on a second. Brandon Bullock has shuffled into third. And one thing that is different from usually a lot of leagues we can cover on Racecraft TV or even in the broader space of sim racing is that this had predetermined qualifying. Of course, Ian, you were around for the clash a couple of weeks back with Jacob Hitz in the broadcast booth. You had a sort of a vantage point as to what kind of racing we would expect to see here tonight from the Daytona International Speedway. What things stood out to you the most in that clash race versus what you could probably expect from a majority of the field tonight here in this 100-lapper and the Triple M Pulling 250?
Well, we see right now as these trucks come across the line for lap 5 that there seems to be one line kind of right now, the bottom line, that all these trucks are in, just trying to tick away some of these laps here on the longer race length that we have. But when we were watching that clash a few weeks ago, Jacob and I noticed that all over the racetrack, lines were 2 or 3 wide the whole night long. With the shortened lap count that we had in the clash, a lot of these drivers, I think, saw their window to make a move and maybe an opportunity go a little bit quicker than they will tonight. But it's also interesting to watch, especially here on Super Speedway Racing, the pit strategy as well, because you have to pit with a group. You can't just pit by yourself and then get back up to race speed. You'll get swallowed up by the pack and eventually lapped. So it's always fun to watch that strategy on Super Speedway races, sees who goes with each other, like you said earlier, making friends. And yeah, you got to do that for 100 laps here tonight. So I think we're going to see a lot more patience from these drivers. Maybe not as few aggressive moves, but anything happens when it's 10 laps to go and the gloves come off.
And that's a solid point there, Ian, about pitch strategy, and we're going to talk about that mostly throughout the third stage. Of course, being 50 laps, you cannot go all the way from stage 2 to the checkered flag all the way on one single tank of gas. You are going to have to pit at least once, at least for the first 2 stages. You can be relatively safe. For the most part, these trucks can go around 30 to 32 laps on a set of gas, so at least it won't be a huge concern right now, but there may be a concern for the race lead. Only one truck up there, Ian, working all by himself, and he is somehow getting closer and closer to Tyler Dimmer. Tim Hammond in the 93 doing some quick work on the tri-oval.
Yeah, Tim Hammond doing a great job on the outside, working the side draft of the long snake line. We have all these trucks and able to move himself all the way up to the front now and making a challenge for the lead as we have the leaders going 3 wide now. You don't see that every day, a single truck making its way all the way up to the pack like that. Now that that line is kind of strung together again, you see him losing a little bit of pace there, but that is an impressive move to go around the outside like that and just side draft your way all the way to the front, Kenneth.
And Tim Hammond, 26 positions in the opening 7 laps here from Daytona. He started all the way back in 29th, and now he has approached the top 3. Now falling back, of course, the draft and the strength in numbers on the bottom are really going to help everybody down there, and Hammond's just going to have to either find space or maybe find some friends, as they were 3 wide for the race lead. And we had a switch 1-2. It was Dittmer leading with Meza behind, and now Raul Meza is taking over the race lead as Hammond continues to fall back. Maybe some space between himself and the 3, Chris Cinnamon, who, by the way, Ian, of course, the defending winner here at Daytona from 1 season ago in the points race. So Cinnamon with a lot to look forward to here in Season 5, and also the Season 4 champion. So there is definitely a lot of pressure for Cinnamon to back things up, not only here at Daytona, but also to back things up in the entire season once we get out of the World Center of Racing. And as a driver who wins a championship, you're at the top level, and then you have to come back to Daytona and do it all over again. Is there somewhat of a weight on your chest to do well and to perform as good, if not better, in the next following season after you get your first title? Or is it still much the same motive as everybody else? Just have a clean slate and just try to have fun.
Well, that's the fun thing about sim racing, right? Everybody has different motives for what they're doing and everything. And if it was me, yes, of course, I'd want to come in here and do as well as I can and get a good start to my season. But this is an incredibly long season we hear out in the NASRA Pulling and Truck Series here. We're going to go all the way into December before we get to our championship round. So you can't take too much out of one race result. I do know Chris Cinnamon, his only win, I believe, last year came here at Daytona. So I'm sure, would love to see it on the start of the season here and end up in victory lane. But at the same time, you do understand that it's pack racing. Anything can happen there. As we see the 17 get a little bit loose, that's going to back up the bottom line. Now contact with the 88 and the 11's in the wall, Kenneth. Not exactly sure what happened there. You see 17 down on the low side now.
Yeah, there were 3 wide fanning out in the 17 of Brandon Bullock. Had to duck out of harm's way. There you see him on the apron trying to merge back into turn 1. Finally is able to get some space. But Bullock has fallen significantly throughout the field all the way down to 23rd. And by the way, that was around the time where a second lane was developing. Here comes Tyler Dittmer defending a shot here from Tim Hammond, of course, our biggest mover so far here tonight. But that little hiccup, Ian, distributed the whole field. We have the top 5 all in their own league. Everybody 6 on back, starting with the 13 of Michael McKinnon, are trying to pick the pieces back up from that little scuffle, and they are trying to get single file. That's the 3 machine of Chris Cinnamon behind him as the leaders continue to go door to door for the race lead, and your pole sitter, Zach Hardwick, finally gets back to the front.
And that's what I was saying, too, before we had that little bit of a kerfuffle on track, is that anything can happen here, especially in plate racing, and so many things are out of your control. You just hope that you choose the right draft partner and the right line instead of all the incidents all night long. So you can't put too much weight into one single race, especially a restrictor plate race in the first race of the season. But you got to think that all these guys want to get their season started on a high note as well.
And we talk about Daytona obviously being a track that's very much up in the air. It's a super speedway race. We've seen countless, and I say countless different types of scenarios, whether it's a driver dominating the field in the draft, whether it's a newcomer or rookie coming out of nowhere in the middle of the field in the final laps to go on to win the race, the many crashes that we see out of turn 4 that, by the way, happened in the clash a couple of weeks ago before Taylor Peacock crossed the line first for his win there in that respective clash. And this is mostly just, though, a trendsetter as well, as they're picking 3 wide. That's one of the lap trucks there, staying out of harm's way, and Dimmer will get through clearly. So will the rest of the field in the front. But this is a trendsetter for the rest of the season. If you can start Daytona with a win, or even much so a survival finish, a good finish here at the World Center of Racing, that could get your spirits up by the time we continue our season. And by the time we do continue our season, we'll be in our second week, July 15th, at Homestead of Miami Speedway. So then you'll have to set yourself up for a different type of track, but you will still carry a lot of the confidence. And Ian, confidence very big for a lot of drivers, not only in the real life part of things, but in the sim as well. If you can have a lot of that confidence, determination within yourself after a good finish, there's no doubt that you can go very, very far just based off of that little drip of confidence that you get at one certain race as we continue to watch the battle for the lead.
Yeah, racing is such a mental activity, even on the iRacing service here, that, yeah, you're right, confidence can go such a long way. And, you know, maybe not even confidence 100%, but you put yourself in a position to win like Taylor Peacock did last week, and the seas kind of part for you, and you get that checkered flag. You know, maybe you're not going to feel as confident as if you led every single lap and beat everybody, but you might have a little bit of a thought where it's like, hey, maybe this is my year, this is my season where my luck is going to fall in my favor. So I think that's the fun thing about starting here at a track like Daytona, is it's almost kind of a roulette wheel, and we'll see who comes out on top at the end of the night tonight. But that's why people love restrictor plate racing, is we see a group of 2 here on the outside lane kind of trying to make a push for the front.
And really, that's why a lot of people like Daytona, just the prestige of this track, what it means to win here in real life and in the sim as you ride on board. With the 93 of Tim Hammond trying to get the push to Tyler Dimmer in the 34, but Zach Hartwick, your pole sitter tonight, set the fastest time in the qualifying sessions a little while ago. He continues to lead this race as they are now even coming out of turn 2. The Grand Black Michigan native for Redline Racing trying to hold on to his bright purple crush machine, getting pushed by the 32 Raul Meza. And now finally, Ian, we get to see that inside lane get back in the reins, although it isn't many drivers in the group. I believe the last one really in touch of the draft, actually, is pretty far behind. It may be the number 2 of Ted Wade, who's way back in it, as now they're side-by-side for position around the mid-pack. This is around Joey Doucette, Stephen Thomas, the 16 and the 23 going at it. But at the moment, none of them being very aggressive to that outside to make a move for the lead just yet. They're maybe just trying to capture the slingshot energy, if we could call it like that.
Yeah, it's hard to tell right now. I got about 10 laps left to go in this stage, so you might be seeing some guys trying to position themselves into a spot where they can start pushing to the front, and I think that's what we're seeing there about mid-pack with that second line getting formed up there with about 5 or 6 trucks. And that's another interesting strategical part of Daytona International Speedway, is that you can't really make a move in the span of, you know, a lap, maybe a half a lap. I mean, you could make a move left or right or dodge an accident possibly, but you really got to set yourself up early and be deliberate with your moves you make on the racetrack, because one wrong move and you lose the draft, you're going to find yourself being freight trained all the way back to the back of the pack, which isn't that big of a deal when you're racing for a stage win. But when we're 10 laps to go at the end of this race, you're going to see some desperate moves and probably see some guys get hung out to dry, as we see the 34 now of Dittmer move down to the bottom in front of Meza, and they're going to try to get past some lap traffic here, which was something that led to some problems in the clash, but looks like everybody's doing a good job here. A few drivers down on the apron to avoid contact, Kenneth.
And as we're going to turn 1, there was a sketchy move involving your pole sitter, Zach Hardwick. We saw the 34 of Tyler Dimmer swerve onto the bottom to make sure he can command the drivers down low. They all got loose, and that Hardwick machine got all out of shape, and now he is just trying to limp it back, merging into turn 3 and 4, so your pole sitter already falling deep within the pack, 24th, with help from the 13 of Michael McKinnon. There are the 2, and they have severely fallen off the draft, so that's going to be very tough coming down to the end of this first stage at lap number 25. And you make a good point as well, picking and choosing your moments, trying to build up the energy to get a pass complete, to get some other drivers with you to work together, whether it be on the bottom, whether it be in the middle, whether it be up against the outside wall. We call it the Dale line in NASCAR terms. And when you're trying to do that as well, these drivers also have to keep in mind that the time is running out for the stage, so they need to build that up in a certain amount of time so that by the time they get around lap 25, they at least have a shot at getting some good points that'll not only carry through to tonight's race here at Daytona, it'll carry through the rest of the season, and that could set, again, trend set yourself in the right direction as Dittmer leads the field single file. No charge from the outside. We approach the final handful of laps until our first stage conclusion at 25. Dittmer and Meza, the 34 and the 37, Ian, have been stellar tonight so far at the front. They've been controlling the pack, and they have not been afraid to do so either.
Yeah, Meza, again, doing a great job pushing whoever is leading this race out to even more of a lead, even putting a little bit of a gap on the 88 truck there. I'm going to be interested to watch the rest of the night as well. Some of the different strategies that these drivers will have as we get later and later in the night. A lot of these guys out here are thinking about the long-term picture. They're thinking about points, and this is race one, but you want to bank up those stage points and those race points as much as you possibly can. But at the same time, this is a very unpredictable restrictor plate race, so you might see some drivers farther in the pack kind of hanging back, maybe trying to short pit going into the final stage, or maybe somewhere in between the final stage, and try to get themselves up into a position where they can win this race, because tires, even though they have 2 sets tonight, aren't going to be that big of a factor, I think. So really it's just going to be trying to see if you can get an advantage by switching up the fuel mileage strategy a little bit, Kenneth.
Yeah, fuel mileage is going to be huge, and we're also going to possibly touch into the whole team aspect of super speedway racing. Of course, we've already got some teammates near the front of the field, the 2 trucks that have the 9s in front of them, the 93 of Tim Hamner. Remember, he started deep in the field, the 99 of Devin Painter, both of them part of BP Racing for Autism. They basically line up the drivers in number 93 all the way to number 99. So they've got a very stout group of drivers right now that could potentially work together to get not only to the end of this stage and maybe get a stage win for the team, but also be there at the end for the checkered flag. We had a change for position up in front. Rayo Mesa now has control of the lead. Tyler Dittmer decided to go up high a couple laps ago to defend against Lucas Whitehead, who was getting a big charge out of turn 2. Finally, I think, Ian, 5 laps away from the end of stage 1, we have a grouped up field. They all accordioning together, and now we have a solid inside and outside charge as well.
And you saw it happening the past couple of laps, these guys grouping up, forming 2 lines, maybe even 3 lines we'll see here. I think that's a little bit too aggressive this early in the race, but you never know. People are going to make moves to try to get these stage points because they're very important when we get into the playoffs later this season. So we're starting to see 2 wide, maybe even 3 wide racing coming back to the stripe. It's going to be lap 21 this time, so I believe 4 laps ago in the stage.
And you think about drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. We've seen him be very aggressive for stage wins, especially at the super speedways where he's been very well in the past couple of years. And at the moment, the entire field looking to step up the aggression as they enter back into turn 1. Dittmer with a better run this time with help from Lucas Whitehead and Tim Hammond. A more collective effort this time through. It looked a little sporadic by the time Dittmer had moved up in front of the 88, but finally they have grouped together a nice shove from the 88 to the 34. That'll bring Dittmer back to the race lead into turn 3.
Yeah, watching the 16 truck down there, too. Doucette doing a great job pushing Meza down on that bottom line. I think that the top line gets the advantage coming through the straightaways, but then when we dive back into the corners, you see the bottom line start to get a push there. So on the top line, it's all going to be about timing that spot right at the end of this stage to try to put yourself just in front of the car on the bottom line there. So we see a little bit of a trouble. Meza getting a little bit out of shape there. I don't know if he got some contact from Doucette or what happened there, Kevin.
Maybe it looked like Doucette got a little eager there on the rear bumper and almost about turned to 37. And fortunately, the 37 of Mesa continues to keep it straight and holds on to the lead for a moment. You do bring up a good point, Ian, about the outside line getting the advantage coming out of the corners on the straightaways and continue to wiggle down the super stretch, and that inside lane just having the shortest way around the racetrack and that advantage going into the corners. That inside lane, though, we've seen before, not only in these trucks, but in other stock cars on the iRacing service. They are prone to checkups down there, so that outside lane can have that advantage as well. Lucas Whitehead, Tyler Dittmer decided to duck down low. They take control of the race lead on the bottom, but here comes Mesa deciding to switch it back up top. This time help from the 93 of Tim Hammond, and they'll be even once again back to turn 1.
Yeah, and if you're Mesa, you kind of got the door shut on you a little bit there. So if I was him, I'd be up on the wheel here trying to get back in front of the 34 car and not necessarily pay it back. But when moves like that are made in front of you, it sparks a little bit of a fire on you when you're in the driver's seat. So we'll see what him and the 93 can do on the outside here. And It looks like that the outside had a really good run last lap, but this time around the bottom line is way more formed up. You got the 34, 88, 16 all kind of linked together here and just pushing their way up to the front with 2 laps to go this time.
And you just have a huge line of trucks from basically the first truck leading this race, the 34, all the way back to, I believe one of the lap trucks here. There is a second pack around the top 30, top 25. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. They will get clenched up together once we end this first stage in a handful of laps time, but it extends way past beyond what that outside lane is capable of. Only about 5 or 6 trucks, give or take, on that outside lane trying to put something together, and Mesa suffering the reality of the situation as there's not many trucks up there. The draft isn't as heavy, so Mesa will fall back, but finally gets a run out of turn 2 that'll bring him closer to the race lead and will edge him ahead by just a handful of feet before Dittmer gets back to the inside. As we approach the final lap in stage 1, the aggression already stepping up. We may have a side-by-side battle going all the way to the wire.
Yeah, and you brought up the fact that the top line doesn't have as many cars. I don't think that's necessarily the concern of the top line. Once you get about 5 or 6 trucks in a line, I think you kind of negate some of the advantage there that having all the trucks on the bottom. But the top line's just not having a great job forming up right now. You got to form a nice, orderly pack and get right up on each other. There's a lot of space on the top line right now, which is letting the bottom lane just chip away at this lead.
And Whitehead got a little bit loose out of turn 2, and they are starting to push the pusher. Joey Doucette trying to clinch up together against that number 88 to bring the 34 closer to the front. They'll still be even going into turn 3. Mesa with a push from Hammond, the biggest mover all night tonight, as they come out of turn 4, the final lap in stage number 1. Dittmer, Mesa coming out of the 4th corner, but it looks like the charge will not be enough, at least for a moment, to the trial. Tyler Dittmer will win stage 1 in the Triple M Pulling 250.
Kind of what I expected out of the first stage, Kenneth. Everybody kind of feeling out their spot. You saw a few drivers at the lead of the pack early in the race drop back and form a little bit of a second pack, but good clean racing there from these drivers for the first 25 laps, and Dittmer walks away with the stage win, so you got to think he's thrilled about that.
A lot of good points going to that 34, and his move to the front of the field very early on in this race after starting 6th definitely paid off. Lucas Whitehead is scored as 2nd, while Mesa on that outside lane was trying to get close to P1, but got good enough of a finish for P3. Joey Doucette, Tim Hammond are the two last ones, at least, that wrap up the top 5 as the caution waves, and they will try to close up on the iRacing official pace car. Well, as we end stage number 1, we'll remind you that our stages tonight and our finish is brought to you by Buck Kicker. For over 20 years, Buck Kicker has been delivering the most innovative tactile feedback experiences with haptic transducers that provide accurate and powerful response, making them a trusted leader in the haptic industry. To learn more about all of their products, visit thebuckkicker.com. Obviously, got to thank Buck Kicker for all of their support in the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series. That's going to be a tongue twister for tonight here at Daytona. But as the field calms down behind the iRacing official pace truck, of course, Ian, we should expect the entire field to come down pit road. Maybe not for tires, but fuel going to be the biggest concern. Obviously, they made it to the end of stage 1. They are clear to the end of stage 2. But that setup for stage 3 may even happen here at the end of stage 1. Who knows? Some people are going to try some different things.
I don't really know if there's anything you can do to get yourself out in front on this stop, except for maybe take a little bit less fuel. But if I was on the pit box here making the call for one of my drivers, I would probably just fill it full of race fuel and call it a day. I think your assessment about not putting on tires on this stop is kind of correct. There's not really any kind of advantage, and you're just going to lose spots, and track position is important right now at the end of stage 1.
So here the field will come behind the 34 of Tyler Dittmer, of course, the winner of our first stage. So he'll bring the entire field down to pit road. I believe the only people that should stay out are the lap trucks, and that is indeed the case. We'll have a couple of those lap trucks that were pretty much all by themselves and got swarmed by the field in the opening stage of tonight's race. So they will go down pit road next time by. Obviously, some of them looking for the wave rounds, but Dittmer onto pit road. And just like you said, Ian, no takers for tires. There are no jacks inside. The pit crews just only have the fuel can, and they say good luck. Maybe wipe the grill off of the front end of these trucks, but that is literally it. They are just taking fuel only, and we'll see if Dittmer comes out first. And he does not.
I saw maybe one person there taking tires, and Sometimes I don't know if this is the case. It might be a strategy play, but sometimes you forget to clear your settings. I know I've done it multiple times, Kenneth. Hopefully that wasn't a situation for that driver, though.
So interesting case at the moment for your stage winner, as Joey Doucette in the 16 comes out first. Raul Meza comes out second. Lucas Whitehead, remember, he was basically P2 at the end of stage 1. He falls one spot short to P3. Christopher Blanchard in the 19 is classified as fourth out of pit road. But your stage winner falling very deep throughout the field. And we're going to try to look through him at least in the running order as of the moment. But he is pretty far down, and that call for fuel only, I think, may have been just a little longer than the others, and obviously no penalties there. Everybody was under caution, but at that point, a very interesting situation there. So it looks like our stage winner may not be in contention for stage 2, as the only truck to stay out is the 8 of Adam Cantwell.
Yeah, and everybody coming in this time kind of makes your pit decision pretty simple for stage 2 as well. I mean, you might take right side tires, but pretty much we're just going to see everybody take fuel again, unless we see some yellows here in stage number 2, Kenneth, which these guys have been keeping it pretty clean so far. Pretty different from the Clash a few weeks ago, but hey, you're racing for literal cash and bragging rights on the Clash. Points are a little bit different in an overall season, so I think that's why we're seeing a little bit more of an organized race tonight.
That's definitely true. I mean, the lap counter certainly affects the mentality of the drivers. You think about the Clash, it's not points. You're just running for fun, and obviously you want the win. And most times, some leagues will put up a money prize for it, so you have something to work towards if you get to victory lane. And that Clash, like we were talking about before, this race went green. More hectic, more chaotic, but tonight it looks like a uniform effort for the entire field, not only just the front runners, to get to the end of this race. And we haven't seen any significant amount of contacts. We've seen some sketchy moments, some drivers getting loose, with some bad pushes and maybe some accidents, but other than that, we haven't seen any huge crashes. We haven't seen any spins. We haven't seen anybody around. But at the same time, I could literally be jinxing this entire race, and we may have a caution fest for stage 2. Who knows? I hope not, Ian, but still.
Yeah, as long as we don't say any driver's specific name, I think we'll be okay, because I think the broad commentary curse is okay. But if you call out a specific person, then you feel really bad about it. And you were talking a little bit last stage about how teammates are going to be so important as well. And you were talking about some of the prizes that the drivers had for the Clash. There's actually a team championship for this series as well. Upfront Motorsports was the winner last year, and they took home a prize of $100, which you got to split between your teammates. But hey, some real consequences on the line for our drivers here in the NASRA Pulling M Truck Series.
Hey, a lot to look forward to, not only in tonight's Daytona race, but obviously for the rest of the campaign when we get to Homestead Miami Speedway and beyond. We are ready for a restart here. Lap number 30 of 100, fresh off of stage number 1. Tyler Ditmore, of course, the winner of that one, but it's Joey Doucette and Raul Meza at the front of the field. Green flag back in the air. The field sporadically chasing back to turn 1.
Meza, you see him tucking into the bottom line there and then kind of shooting up to the top. I don't know if he spun the tires a little bit on the restart, but he didn't fire off as good in the bottom line there, Kenneth. So you saw him file in and then shoot back to the top line. Maybe they're finding some momentum now.
And what I noticed there on that restart is at least the first 5 or so trucks on the outside lane, they were tucked together, but everybody behind, I think based on the fact that there was such a huge distance between the front runners who had pitted and everybody else, there was a big distance there and a big gap that may have hurt that outside lane and the chances to get closer to the front of the field. Although the 19, Christopher Blanchard, is doing a solid job of pushing the fellow bow tie up in front, so we may see Raul Meza back in control for the race lead if he can get there. Lap truck at the top of the racetrack, but no worries, they'll split it 3 wide, and they will stay side by side for the lead. The 37 with the nose out front, but Joey Doucette trying to hold on through to the bottom. Lucas Whitehead to push.
And you make a good point there too, Kenneth, that the pack is a little bit stretched out right now. You don't usually see this early in a run, but you also have more fuel to save when you're running in a pack. Maybe not so much as the leader holding it wide open, but if you're any of these cars in the pack, you're lifting, you're braking, you're staying off of the truck in front of you, and that's going to lead to you saving more fuel throughout the course of this run. And like I said, as long as we go green to the end of this stage, pit strategy shouldn't be too crazy so far, but all these things start to make a difference when you add it up over the course of 100 laps.
That's going to make a big difference, and being in the draft is going to matter significantly in that final stage. 50 laps, you can't make it on that one tank of gas that you put in after stage number 2. So being in the draft and pretty much avoiding being up front directly on the front row is going to be the goal, no doubt about it, if you want to at least save some fuel. And if we end up in that fuel mileage situation, then we could see many drivers elect to say, all right, I want you to lead. I don't want myself to be up front because I'm wasting the most fuel at 100% throttle. I'll let you have the spot, and I can just hang in the draft and get some of that to piggyback my way to a potential victory if I can save enough fuel. What I noticed is that we did touch on the team racing a little bit. We do have some teammates close together now, especially near the front, and the 16 of Joey Doucette out of Oakland, I believe Oakland, that is Maine. Yes, Maine. Straight Powerhouse Racing behind the wheel. That's 16 on that team. He's got his teammate, Christopher Blanchard, in the 19, also from Clinton, Maine. Straight Powerhouse Racing, they could close up together. They're pretty far apart now that Blanchard was using the outside lane to get around with the 37. Now find space on the bottom, so the teammates could work together. Just got 2 trucks in the middle, the 28 and the 78. Also in that group as well. So we'll see if actually the 88 and the 78, never mind that. So they're going to be single file, and Meza will have a new pusher behind him. That will be the 47 of James Morris.
Yeah, and it's so fun to watch all the dynamics of the pack racing all night long. You were talking about if you can get your teammate linked up with you there, if you could push yourself to the front with your teammate, you could take turns alternating the lead if the situation allows for it. You see that happen a lot in the Indianapolis 500, not so much in restrictor plate racing here in NASCAR with these trucks, but it's something that you could do. You could switch off the lead. You could drag back a little bit, maybe back the pack up a little bit there, and lead the race while still maintaining fuel. We have trouble.
47 around the 88. Lucas Whitehead gets turned in the front of the field, and we have a huge one flipping up in the air, kick flipping over the entire pack. That is Tim Hammond in the 93. We talked about him making a huge surge to the front after starting deep within the top 25, top 30. And he goes straight to the pit lane, getting a tow, and our first caution comes wildly banging through at lap 34.
And it looks like there, if I was seeing it correctly, it looks like Meza got a little bit wide going into turn 1, and I don't think the truck that was behind him was expecting that. Kind of got up on the quarter panel there, and it just started the chain reaction from there, Kenneth.
And there you see Hammond getting thrust up by the wall. The 19 Blanchard in it as well. As the 93 goes for a ride, there's basically the entire field trying to get out of harm's way, and it all started that 37 drifts up high. You're right in. It's a little bit too high on the racetrack, and Morris not expecting it, and tucks a nose right there, and that is more than enough to send the 37 sideways into Lucas Whitehead. Whitehead goes for a hard hit into the outside safer barrier, careening down into the 19. There's a look at the 93 once again as he gets grabbed by the safer barrier and flipped in the air multiple times on end. And the 19 truck in it as well. The 99, we talked about him a little bit earlier tonight, running at the front of the pack. And that is a huge one here from Daytona. Also to note, there are no fast repairs given to any one of these drivers tonight. So if you end up in a situation like Hammond, good luck to you spending time repairing that truck on pit road. Here's a look in the middle of the field. And that is not the best sight from Daytona to go up end over end.
Yeah, luckily nobody is any danger here on the iRacing service, but that's still a nasty hit to see, especially from the onboard camera there. And you were touching on it a little bit earlier with the strategy that some of these drivers are playing. You know, this changes all of the strategy right here, this yellow right now. I don't think you're going to see any drivers sneak down there and get full fuel in their truck, but you might, and maybe short pit your way on the third stage. So that is a possibility that's opened up right now. 36 laps here, going to, I think, lap 50 for the second stage. So it's something you could do and then maybe short pit the third stage, but I think you're really stretching it at this point.
And we're also looking at some drivers coming in at the moment. That is 9th on back. Zach Hardwick leading the way because obviously he has the second, or rather the first pit stall being the pole sitter. Brandon Bullock is also in the 17 truck. We saw him struggle a little bit earlier on tonight, backed out of the mayhem throughout the field, but he's survived since, and he got by that huge wreck here on lap number 34. So he's out on his way, the access road underneath the apron there here at Daytona, before merging back to the track officially out of turn 2. And now we get to sort of I guess relax, take a breath, and see where the strategy plays out. Because now that they've pitted, does that mean they're gonna stay out here in the second stage, or maybe they're just topping off and maybe it's just a call that's gonna be off or not by the time we reach lap 50? Because when we cross the line, we'll be 14 laps away from the end of stage 2.
Right, and that's going to be the thing to watch for, is if anybody stays out on the end of stage 2. Right now, if everybody comes to pit road at the end of stage 2, then we're all at an even slate, and it really doesn't answer any of the questions that we've had so far about strategy. But you mentioned earlier getting through the carnage, and we kind of ripped the Band-Aid off and got that first wreck out of the way. Maybe these drivers will tighten it up a little bit now, or maybe this is just the first domino of many. So it'll be interesting to see the rest of the drivers here, how they navigate the rest of the incidents we have tonight, if we have any. And something about Daytona, Kenneth, that kind of sets it apart from Talladega, the other super speedway on the NASCAR circuit, is Daytona is quite narrow for a racetrack. You could only just barely fit 3 wide here with it working consistently around the racetrack. So it makes it so much more difficult for these drivers to avoid carnage as it happens in front of them.
That is true. Daytona, of course, being way narrow there. You cannot go really 4 wide. Well, you can, but you're going to have to force your way through there, and most of the time, it ends up in a crash, and it does not look pretty. I like to think of Daytona Talladega as 2 different brothers. You have the more elegant one in Daytona, the more prestigious one, the higher-end one, and then you have the crazy brother in Talladega, because we all know how crazy Talladega is, being longer, 2.66 miles, having higher banking at 33 degrees, having more bumps around the track, being a lot wider. It's crazy, but I mean, you can still find the chaos deep within either of them, and that chaos unfolded just there to bring out our very first caution with only over 10 laps or so before the end of our second stage at lap 50. So as we are bringing the field back together on this restart that will start at lap number 38 as we cross the line, it'll be a Chevrolet Silverado, Joey Doucette, who led us on our last restart after stage 1. After coming out of pit road first, he will lead us back to green in the restart zone. Keith Haney in the 78 will beat to his outside. Haney started back in P20, so it's been a nice move up through the field, and he did a solid job getting away, practically being ahead of that entire incident. Ed Osborne, Stephen Thomas, the 42-23. They'll be the 2 drivers lining up row number 2. Stephen Thomas started back in 35th, so I think now, Ian, we're starting to see the drivers who started deep in the field survive and make their way to the front. Adam Cantwell in the 8 rounds out your current top 5. So Pace Truck will make its way down to the safety of pit road once more after our first caution here in the Triple M pulling 250. Joey Doucette, Keith Haney ready for the restart, and into the Geico restart zone they'll go. Doucette with a solid jump. We're back under green from Daytona.
And you touched on the Geico restart zone there. I'm not exactly sure if they're using the restart rules, but if they are, it adds a whole new level of strategy on the restarts that these drivers haven't seen before. On the initial green flag, you got to go on the green, but if they're using the rules on the restarts and the leader, once they get to that restart zone, it's on them to go. So if you're the car on the outside, you really got to time your start with the leader and try to get a good jump there, as we see in the 20, I believe that's the 23 truck of Thomas making a move to the outside now.
26 of Cody Knott lit up over the radio and said, I'm just going to let everybody by here on the back straightaway. So he did just that with another truck to follow, but they are side by side for the race lead. Here comes Stephen Thomas, some help from Jose Luis Rivera, and the number 20 machine, Keith Haney, trying to give support to the race leader, Joey Doucette. Coming out of turn 4, it will be a beautiful shove by Rivera to give Stephen Thomas a clear headway for the race lead, and a new change in P1. Stephen Thomas to the front.
And I've seen a pattern kind of emerge here with the draft pack. It seems like that outside line is able to get to the front, but anytime the leader does get to the front, they pull down and start to pull away. So you're really going to have to time your passes, especially late in these stages and later on at the finish of this race, to really try to make that move to the front at the end.
So now with Thomas ducking down low, this lap truck, that is Blanchard there in the 19. He was one of the trucks severely damaged in that big one there going into the corner, turn 1. And the 20 of Jose Luis Rivera will have some help this time by the 45 of Dana Shepard. And they'll have a couple of more trucks behind, including your stage 1 winner, Tyler Dimmer. So maybe that little call on pit road that lost him so many spots, I think after that big crash, he is thanking his lucky stars that he was not at the front of the field during all of that, Ian, because the 34 now back in the game, and we have a switch over potentially for the lead to set up top with help from Rivera to P1.
Yeah, and you brought it up. Sometimes a little bad luck early leads to some good luck later. And you said it, what, that we were coming to green here at this time for this restart, that you got to survive, and you really do have to survive and then put yourself in a position with about 5 laps to go to just be able to make a move to the front. You really don't want to be the leader coming to the checkered flag, but you want to be somewhere in that pack 2 or 3 back that you know is going to be there right at the end.
And there are 2 teammates up at the top working together. Of course, mentioned Rivera and Dana Shepard, both of them a part of the North Central Racing Club, and the 20 of Luis Rivera, or Jose Luis Rivera rather, from Chicago, Illinois. And Rivera trying to take the race lead away with his fellow teammate to give assistance behind a very Kyle Larson-esque paint scheme out of the 45 tonight with the Hendrick cars looking Chevrolet Silverado. Of course, that's not the sponsor, but it is the paint scheme design, just with the colors flipped, main red base instead of the main blue that you see Kyle Larson run on the sim, or rather in real life. I get that confused sometimes, the sim in real life sometimes, but Kyle Larson paint scheme inspired with Shepard, and for the 20 of Rivera, it will help him get to the front, although Shepard is suffering some connection issues, so the push may be not that strong as the field will pack in together, and Doucette will have a clear run for the race lead without any pressure out of turn 4.
You're talking about getting sim in real life confused. That's definitely something that you don't have in real life. 3-4 wide in a draft back here at a restrictor plate track, and all of a sudden the guy in front of you disappears. So it's pretty unnerving if you're the truck behind that truck that's having the connection issues to really stay in the throttle there, because you don't want to lead into a situation where that truck blinks back into existence and you're right on top of them and you end up causing an accident that way.
So they'll stay side by side. Only 4 trucks at the top side of the racetrack. I think similar to our first stage, Ian. I think we're probably going to see the same thing play out from stage 1 translating into stage 2. We'll see this type of racing where, yes, there is a pack up top and they run for the race lead, but there aren't as many trucks up there. It's not as organized. But then when we get to the last couple of laps, as we're starting to approach them, the final 8 before stage 2, we'll probably see everybody get way more organized and way more aggressive. Remember, of course, there are points on the line for the entire season in each and every stage throughout the season, so you're going to want to have as many points as possible. Dittmer getting the most in stage 1, and now Dittmer with the possibility to get the most in stage 2, but he's going to need some work to do here as Rivera finally gets to the race lead for a moment before breaking even again in turn 1 with Doucette in the 16.
Yeah, and Dittmer moving his way back up the pack after coming out really, really late in that last caution, really deep in the pack. So just goes to show, if you can find your way through the pack, how easy it is to navigate your way to the front. But the challenge is, once you get to the front, how are you going to hang on to it? Because you know, if you're that truck taking the white coming to the checkered flag, someone's going to be taking a run at you on the left outside or the inside, or possibly both. And sometimes there's no way to cover all 3 ways. You just got to hold your line and hope for the best, as we're coming to almost 10 to go here. Almost 7 to go here in the stage. So we'll start to see some of these drivers fan out, maybe even try to make a 3rd line here.
And what strikes me here is what the moves could be if you're the 20 and the 45. Of course, mentioned they are part of the same team at the North Central Racing Club, and we have seen already within stage 1 and stage 2, while we've been green for most of this race, apart from that first caution, that usually when the truck on the outside gets a nose out head and they clear the driver on the bottom, they switch down there immediately. And right now the 20 is in a position to do that, but because he has his teammate there, he's electing to stay up top, and he's letting Doucette and the 23 of Steven Thomas have the space down low. So it's interesting that they are not deciding to go down there, and maybe they're planning something to where in the final laps of this stage, where they can control the pace, they can elect to have Shepard and Rivera clear that 16 truck and then get down to the bottom. We've seen that happen maybe once or twice already so far in this Triple M pulling 250, and it may happen again, but Rivera and Shepard not having much success, especially the 45 having those connection issues that continue to plague the push from the 42.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, if you're the 42, you don't want to get too close to that truck, but it's a catch-22 because you need to get close to that truck and form that lineup. You see the 23 and the 16 are linked up right now, and the run they get diving down in the turn 3, it's just a product of this pack racing that we have with all these trucks running about the same horsepower and the same setup as well. It really just comes down to finding the air and making your passes that way. And you talked about teammates getting linked up and possibly locking out the front row. Well, that's always the plan, right? But sometimes you got to improvise, and you really just have to go whoever think is going to get to the front. It's such a mind game, especially coming down late into these stages, of who you're going to go with as the field is approaching lap traffic here. This might be a little interesting.
Yeah, lap truck there on the bottom, but he will stay out of harm's way. We'll try to identify exactly who that is as they come across to the start-finish line. There's a bright orange Ford F-150, but the field clear, so no problems there. And we are approaching the final 4 laps here in this stage. But obviously, Ian, there's nothing worse than having your teammate behind you and you're working together swimmingly. It looks like the collective effort is going so well, and then you get ripped apart by either one of the teammates making a move that doesn't go well, or something happens where it just breaks up the whole field. A crash could break up the teammates as well. So you just need to, again, like you said, it's a game of adaptation. You have to constantly adjust to your surroundings and see what works best for not only you, but for your team. You want to have your entire team there at the end, like you mentioned, for that team championship, and as well as individual drivers championships. You want to have as many teammates in there as you can in the final 4 later this year. Rivera with an opportunity to clear, but he does not. Stays with the 45, and Doucette will again nudge himself down low. There really hasn't been a convincing leader each and every lap, and really the only thing to note so far, Keith Haney got a little bit loose there on the inside a couple corners ago, but he seems to have collected that Ford F-150. He's back on his way, and the field's starting to punch in a little bit closer together. Tyler Dittmer, I see the 55 James Haney. They're starting to close in on the outside lane. Same deal for the last 2 trucks in this group, the 5 of Jacob Klinkhart and the 17 of Brandon Bullock. So this may be the pack, Ian, that we're seeing for the end of stage number 2.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, too, about the disparity and how many trucks were in each line. And this top 15 pack is fanned out pretty evenly, too wide here as they go into turn 1. So kind of fixes some of those issues that you were talking about earlier with trying to find a draft partner when everybody kind of pairs up equally like this. And it's not surprising to see we're coming to 1 lap to go here in the, or sorry, 2 laps to go here in the stage. And really, you're just trying to make as many positions as you can. And, you know, the slightest of margins, we've seen it so many times at tracks like this, can make all the difference. So just trying to put yourself in a position where you can get the most points going into the stage 3.
And so they remain side by side coming to the final 2 laps here in stage number 2 in the Triple M pulling to 50. Again, only 1 caution has been thrown so far tonight. Hopefully we stay that way for the end of this race, all the way to the 250 miles that we'll cross at the end of lap number 100. Still even side by side between Doucette and Rivera. And I was noticing the 55 of Haney getting a little bit squirrely with the 34 of Dittmer behind him. Maybe they're planning a move near the end of this stage, but they haven't pulled out their tricks just yet. Still holding behind the 42 of Ed Osborne. They got very close coming out of the degrees of banking out of turn 2. Dittmer gets, I believe, put almost 3 wide coming out of turn 2 to the back straightaway, and now Rivera will have a chance to clear, but will not. Door will be shut, and Doucette goes back to the race lead in turn 3.
And something to keep in mind as we're seeing these trucks getting squirrely, Kenneth, is we have 50 laps on these tires now and already a heat cycle in them as well. So these tires might be getting to fall off a little bit on these drivers, not able to keep it as tight as they were earlier in the race.
That is definitely true, and maybe that could result in some drivers going in and saying, hey, why not? I'll check the tires in and I'll get some 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles, get maybe some extra grip, especially on the restarts. That's going to be a very big point if we get more than a couple of cautions in that last sector in stage number 3 as we cross the line for the final lap in stage number 2 in the Triple M pulling to 50. Again, Doucette and Rivera have not given up for the race lead. 45 of Shepard with a better push for his North Central Racing Club teammate, but there are more numbers down there to assist. 23 of Thomas with a good push to the 16 entering turn 3, and the final handful 100 of feet to the start-finish line to conclude stage 2. Rivera trying to mount a final charge. Doucette trying to hold up on the defense, and the defense will be good enough to last. Joey Doucette leads after stage number 1 on the restart as they crash across the line. The 55 of Haney going around, but Joey Doucette, winner of stage 2.
Doucette just had a really good drive that entire stage, even with the caution coming out and inheriting the lead a little bit, just kept himself out in front, and it just really managed that bottom line really well. The trucks got to his outside and maybe even got to his door a few times, but he was able to hang on there and just drive his line and take the shortest way around the racetrack and led it to a stage 2 victory.
And here's a look at the replay of the crash across the start-finish line. 3 trucks involved in that. Of course, the 55 of James Haney, as you see him careen down to the inside wall. Fortunately, is able to stop the truck in enough time and almost got hit by the pace truck, but he was waiting just to get out in the right place to catch up to the leaders. It was the 34 of Dittmer who got into him. There's a look on board with the 34. The 5 machine of Klinkhart also got into it, so Dittmer may be assessed an end-of-line penalty if he is, of course, caused as the cause of caution, which may, of course, be the case. He's got some damage now on the left front of his Chevrolet Silverado. So Dittmer had a night going a little bit sour after the stage 1 victory, and now it's starting to get a little more worse. It's starting to get on the negative side if you're that 34, as he takes it down to pit road or nurse it to his stall. Well, he will try to get his damage fixed.
And that's how fast your luck can turn at Daytona. They had a really good run, in-stage run, like you mentioned. Stage 2 didn't really want to go his way. They're deep in the pack, coming to the checkered flag for a stage, and anything can happen there, and got himself kind of caught up into some trouble. And like you said, maybe an EOL penalty as well. I think this is the stop, Kenneth, though. If anybody's going to take tires in this race, this is going to be the stop. It's almost ludicrous to do it in the green flag stop we're going to have here later in the race, if we do come to green flag stops, unless you're coming down with a group of people that have all agreed to take 4 tires. So this is going to be the stop to watch to see if anybody goes off the tire strategy.
Going to be a huge question mark as to where anybody is going to take any Goodyear Eagles, and that turns back to our point about setting up for stage 3. This call, if you take tires or not, depending on what you do, could set yourself up positively or negatively, or maybe just in the middle, neutralizing itself going into the final stage, which will be, of course, our longest stage and our final one of the night. And these drivers, if we stay green, will have to come down pit road. We, of course, had that big one around lap 34 in the middle of stage number 2. If we have a caution or maybe multiple in stage number 3, then that could also shake up the pit strategy. And I think, Ian, you are right. Drivers are taking tires, including your stage 2 winner, Joey Doucette. All 4 Goodyear Eagles there on the 16, and it will not cost him any bit of time. Doucette wins the race off of pit road.
I think the only other time we're going to see any of our drivers take tires on their trucks in this race is if we possibly get into an overtime situation and we've ran all 50, 55 laps, or however many we have here, 50 laps under green. But really, I think that was the time to take tires if you were going to take them. And I'm interested to see. I don't think anybody decided not to take tires, possibly, or Doucette was just out in such a lead there on the first stall that he was able to get out before anybody that just took fuel.
It was a 4-tire stop, 14.5 seconds in the box for Doucette, but the driver who comes out second is one that we haven't really seen all night long, the 82 of Brian Abbott, who started this race in 13th. He had an 8.6-second stop, so that may be the 2-tire call that we were kind of thinking would happen. Like you said, Ian, the different calls that will set us up for the final stage in the last 50 or so laps. So as stage 2 comes to a conclusion, we'll remind you, of course, once again, that our Triple M Pulling 250 here in the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series is brought to you by Butt Kicker. For over 20 years, Butt Kicker has been delivering the most innovative tactile feedback experiences with haptic transducers that provide accurate and powerful response, making them a trusted leader in the haptic industry. To learn more about all of their products, you could visit thebuttkicker.com. Joey Doucette has just hit pit road, Ian. I'm not sure what happened here. Did he not put enough fuel in the 16?
Maybe not enough fuel, or possibly just playing the strategy of coming down and getting a little bit more fuel. I don't think we see anything about a speeding penalty or anything like that, so I don't think that's what it is. So he might have just stopped in on this lap and just topped it off a little bit more, trying to stretch this final stage farther.
So it looks to be the case, I think, in somewhat of relevance and pretty much mirroring the exact thing that Tyler Dittmer did. They're going onto pit road in the first stage after winning, so Doucette basically taking a step out of Dittmer's book there and will be at the back. Maybe he's also anticipating a big crash in the middle of stage number 3 to end this race. So that'll shove Brian Abbott, who was second out of pit road, to the race lead. Dana Shepard, we talked about him working fluidly with his teammate Jose Luis Rivera. They are now going to be second and third respectively in different rows. Adam Cantwell will occupy P4. Keith Haney in the 78. We saw him in the front of the pack near the end of stage 2. He lines up the top 5 as you continue to look at that bright orange number 16 of Doucette. So he gets the most points for that stage 2 victory. But only caveat is he'll be at the rear of the field, basically, and he will need to have a lot of work done. But there is still a lot of time, Ian. So I think now we've seen some of the patience being played by some of the field. I think at this point, stage 3, final 47 laps, is where patience is going to be at the utmost importance to get to the finish of the race.
Yeah, I don't think any time right now is the time to try to gamble for track position. You still got possibly one more green flag stop, so we're seeing some of the strategy plays back happening again. Doucette dropping himself all the way back to the field with 4 fresh tires. Probably just going to try to work his way up as much as he can.
Doucette falling all the way back to 23rd on the running order. Green flag back in the air as we start the final stage in the Triple M pulling 250 from the Daytona International Speedway. Brian Abbott taking 2 tires on that most recent stop, and he will lead the field back to turn 1.
And again, Kenneth, we're seeing that bottom lane on the restarts kind of control the restarts to be able to get off to a really good jump. It seems like the second lane is having a little bit of problems getting the jump there. And I don't know if that was one drive, if that was a 45 truck in the wall in the backstretch there, or if that was just a bad connection issue again. But it looked like he touched the wall a little bit there coming out of 2.
Yeah, just got into the wall all by his lonesome. The aid of Adam Cantwell had to step out of the way and hop on the brakes to get out of the way in case the 45 was going to get back on the track and maybe get into other drivers. Fortunately, though, not much damage assessed to Shepard's machine. But once again, we see the North Central Racing Club teammates, the 20 and the 45, working together once more on that very outside lane. And what questions me here, Ian, is whether they're going to go down low, clear the leaders down on the bottom, and then just try and hold the pace through, or maybe they could try and gridlock. We've seen that happen before with teammates where they occupy the inside and the outside, just basically telling the entire field, hey, we've got control of the field. Now we can set the rhythm to whatever pace we find most comfortable. But that obviously hasn't happened yet. Abbott with a solid push from the 78 of Keith Haney to keep them even back to turn 3.
Well, that's a solid point, and something I've noticed last time by is the 82 has a little bit of damage on his nose, at least visually. I don't know if it's something that's actually affecting him on his end in the sim, but it does seem like the 20 is able to get to his door a lot easier. And if you have a little bit of damage on your nose, you can kind of hide yourself in the pack, and that doesn't really affect you as much. But if you're at the front of this field, it's really going to have effect on you and the line that you're in all the way back to the pack.
So with the fact that we had the big crash and multiple different pitch strategies, of course, you're seeing Brian Abbott, names like that, up in the front of the field. The driver from Hogansville, Georgia, for the upfront Team Ford camp there, as a couple of drivers get a little bit squirrely coming out of turn 2. There also are some new names around the top 5, including the 48 machine, Robbie Richards, in that Chevrolet Silverado. He now occupies 3rd on that inside lane. The driver out of Gastonia, North Carolina for Mission 1 Esports, having a couple of teammates, obviously, throughout the rest of the season as well. So he's filed in 3rd on the inside lane, and he started back in 31st. So I think now, Ian, we're starting to see the big movers start to come up through the front of the field, because basically everybody in the top 10 crossing the line with 43 laps to go started 10th or worse. Unbelievable.
Yeah, handed to Brian Abbott right now. He just does have damage on his nose, but it looks like the truck isn't having any problems, and he's able to hang on to that bottom line really well right now and stay just in front of the 20 of Rivera, although we see a push by a 45 and a run down here into turn 4. I wonder if he'll try to clear him this time.
Ted Wade in the 2, going down low on the apron, basically saying, all right, I'm not comfortable with this at all. But you make a good point whether the teammates can get to the front and swap in front of the 82, and the answer, again, is a resounding no. Abbott and company down low, continuing to hold themselves strong on the very bottom, hugged up toward that double yellow line, which I don't believe there is a rule here, or maybe there is. Not entirely sure in the rule book here for NASRA, but they remain side by side, coming to the final 42 laps here in the Triple M pulling 150. But now, Ian, we mentioned, of course, you cannot go all the way in this stage on a single tank of gas, as one truck gets turned in front of the field. That, I believe, is the 13, Michael McKinnon, getting turned around. The 22 involved in it as well. That's Jeffrey Sickles, and multiple trucks had nowhere to go as they closed up to the top of the 31 degrees of banking. And, Ian, we have our second caution flown at lap 59.
Yeah, and it looked like just a simple matter, again, from my angle, that someone getting a little bit too far up the racetrack than somebody was expecting, and all it takes is a little bit of a quarter panel here. You're running so fast, and it just upsets the car so easily that, yeah, you see the 13 there kind of cut down in front, not intentionally, just trying to get back in line, and it was just not quite clear enough yet, Kenneth.
We'll take a look at the extent of the damage there. The 13 McKinnon, and it was Trey Pitts in the 27 machine, a bright red truck you see on the inside lane there, just behind the bright blue and white Chevrolet Silverado of McKinnon. We'll take another look at it. So McKinnon tries the middle and says, all right, let me go down to the bottom, but not clear, of course, in turn 1. And Pitts gets into him, obviously nowhere to go. You see a bunch of other trucks involved, and then he comes back down the track, gets into Sickles in the 22, and Sickles, absolutely nothing he could do to avoid that, as McKinnon just came down, barreling across the track. I believe it was also the 87, Justin Lumpkin, involved in that incident. So we're right on board here with Trey Pitts entering turn 1, and obviously he's going to get confused with the 13 coming down and say, what is happening here?
And you see there too, it's just the slightest of taps and they just barely ran out of room. And there's a little bit of fear of as a driver there. If you're the one that gets hung out to dry, you're trying to get back into line as fast as you can without losing any spots. And you see some of that desperation come into play there, and why we have our second caution of the night.
And you know what I noticed as well? I mean, we haven't talked about the sucker hole here at Daytona just because we haven't seen any large 3-wide action, as some of the leaders are now taking a step down to pit road, although it is not everybody. Robbie Richards in the 48 being basically the first to lead everybody behind him in Trey Pitts. You see the red truck involved in that incident. He is also stepping down pit road, the 23, Stephen Thomas, and countless amount of trucks that are just looking to top off on fuel, at least to get closer to the end of this race on a single tank of gas. Maybe that could help him in the final 40 laps, but again, still way out of that fuel window to get to the checkered flag on just that single stint. But also what I noticed, I mean, we didn't talk about the sucker hole. We haven't been 3 wide, so we haven't seen anybody get to the middle and directly anchor back to the rear of the field. But I mean, that is still the fear here, and like you said, as a driver, you want to get in the middle, and then you're trying to switch lanes, and you're trying to be careful as well. You're looking in your mirrors, and you're hearing your spotter, making sure that nothing is going wrong with McKinnon, although McKinnon made that mistake with Pitts, but just afraid to get pushed in the middle, afraid to get split even to a point where he has no help, he has nobody to assist, and you're basically helpless trying to find space either on the inside or the outside.
And there's really just nothing that you can do. And you talked a little bit earlier about drivers coming down pit lane. You're right, it's not enough time and not enough fuel to make it to the end of this race so far. I think the most that any of these drivers could stretch it, and this is being way deep in the draft and saving a whole bunch of fuel, is probably 34 laps. But what it does do is when you come down on pit road for that green flag stop or for the last stop of the race, it makes the time on pit road you have to spend fueling up lower. So if you come in at a pack, maybe you come out in the front of the pack where you're maybe mid or the back of the pack for that last stop.
So our second caution for crashes. Of course, this is our 4th caution overall, but this is our second due to an incident out on the racing surface. Brian Abbott, your current race leader, coming to 39 laps to go. And Ian, of course, our Triple M Pulling 250 is a marquee event, being the opening race from the World Center of Racing, but our schedule has a lot of variety, a lot of personality, and that starts 1 week from tonight, July 15th on a Friday. We'll kick it off. Stay in the state of Florida, but we'll go down south, Homestead Miami Speedway, and that's a track with multiple grooves, multiple lanes, and then we change things up and go to the beatdown short track of Martinsville, Nashville Super Speedway, and then all the way to Charlotte. I mean, Hickory, Eldora being standout tracks as well. We've got a beautiful schedule here in 2022, and that's going to give these drivers a huge test as to who's really the best in these type of trucks.
Yeah, and early on in the season, that stretch from Martinsville to Talladega is going to be probably the most variation in tracks that these drivers see in such a short point. We go from Martinsville, the short track, to Nashville, a concrete 1.3-mile track, and then all the way over to California and Sonoma, one of the most technical road courses in the world, and then back to Talladega for more pack racing like we're seeing tonight. So that stretch there is really going to be one to watch for these drivers. It's going to put all their skills to the test, and if you can have a good run in those 4 weeks, I think it sets you up really good for the rest of the season.
Yeah, a lot of really good tracks, and that stretch there, Martinsville to Talladega, that's going to be very intimidating for the rest of the field. It stands out to me, I already said it, Eldora being our first and only dirt track race of the season, Hickory Motor Speedway, a grassroots short track that we just saw added to the iRacing service a couple of months back in 2021 on September 23rd. That's going to be another big test of skill and endurance. Rockingham on October 14th in the fall, just right before our final regular season event at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And I think the Sweet 16 start and the rest of the playoffs is the most normal part of the schedule, which is weird to say, but we go all the way to Las Vegas and Sin City for the championship for finale. Of course, still far away from the conclusion of round number 1. Green flag back in the air. Brian Abbott, Jose Luis Rivera to bring us back to turn 1. 82 of Abbott continuing in the race lead. 78, a solid push. Keith Haney and Adam Cantwell. Remember, he was behind Dana Shepard in the 45, the third truck on the outside lane. Well, he has switched it down to be at the bottom in front of the 48 of Robert Richards. So only 2 trucks. The North Central Racing Club trying to hold out to what they can, but they are basically getting swarmed by everybody else as Abbott officially clears for P1.
Yep, and again, Abbott able to hang on to the bottom lane there, and the top lane's really falling apart. Only have 2 trucks right now, but we've seen that actually work all night long. Shades of 2014 NASCAR Cup Racing, where that tandem draft really worked to supremacy here on the High Bank, Daytona International Speedway, and also at Talladega as well. But really, just only 2 trucks on that top lane. The teammates, like you mentioned, all night long, but they're starting to fall back, as you see, falling into turn 1 here.
A lot of them staying back and not really wanting to amp up the intensity. That is, of course, we've got 37 laps to go, and the fuel situation is going to get awfully tight. Remember, 6 on back, starting with the 48 of Robert Richards. They have all come down pit road on that last yellow. Everybody throughout the top 5, Brian Abbott, all the way down to Adam Cantwell, they did not pit. So they are on currently 11-lap-old set of tires and fuel. So that may make things very interesting, a 5-lap difference, and that may mean the discrepancy between either making it to the end or having a lot of trouble, as Dana Shepard gets a little bit wide there into the tri-oval, but will stay behind his North Central Racing teammate. And I think finally, Ian, they can have a breath of fresh air. They finally got over the 82, the 78, the 8 machine, and they control the pace of the field, 1-2.
And we see him plugging away on that top line for about 20, 30 laps now, and they finally make the move down to the bottom. So right now it seems like it's just a freight train all the way back to the pack until we make this final run here. So I think these guys are going to hang on to the lead and try to conserve as much fuel as they can.
Well, it's going to be an effort of conservation for the teammate, Dana Shepard, because Jose Luis Rivera, via doing this, and like I said earlier in the broadcast, many drivers in the field are going to be like, no, you go ahead. No, you want to be in the front. You waste the most fuel, and I'll be fine. On the fuel end side of things, Rivera is going to be wasting the most fuel, no doubt about it, and I don't believe anybody else is going to try to extend their hand and put their foot in the door to go into P1 and command this race, because it'll be at a large cost, and that is, of course, wasting the most fuel and having the least chance to get into the final stage of this race. We do have some takers on the outside lane. That starts with the 23, now making the 8 machine, leading a bunch on the outside, 3 trucks. The 8 machine, Adam Cantwell, trying to build up something to get to the race lead. So never mind about giving up, I guess.
Well, we're coming to 35 laps ago. Well, sorry, 34 laps ago this time by. So you got to start putting yourself in a position where you can make those moves at the end. You do have to start doing that now. If you're going to start that outside lane, you got to start building the momentum in it here. We see about 7 or 8 trucks now on the outside trying to make that line work. And I think we'll see that through the majority of this race.
They've added the 3 and the 2. Chris Cinnamon, your Season 4 champion. Ted Wade in the 2 truck also as well to collect the 42 of Ed Osborne and the 23 of Stephen Thomas. But the 3 and the 2 trying to play an indecisive game. They'll tuck back to the inside as you ride on board there with the 8 of Adam Cantwell, still getting the support from the 23 and the 42. But it seems to not be enough right now. Many trucks on the inside lane. And one thing also to note, there's a second outside group forming up together. And who's leading that? Your pole sitter, Zach Hardwick in the 24.
Yeah, and you'll start to see some of these groups form up here too. If they need to pit, you need to start talking to some of the guys on the racetrack, or maybe get your spotters to talk to their other spotters and find groups that you want to pit with, especially if you come down one more time under green flag conditions. So that's going to be something we're going to be watching here in the next couple laps too, I think, Kenneth.
That's going to be a big point as well. And what I'm wondering is that the North Central Racing Club teammates, they're only 2 strong. So do they take a sacrifice on their strategy and try to get as many drivers with them as possible? And if they come down, they're going to follow? Or are they going to just thread on another branch and take their own alternative route and be the only 2 coming down pit road together? I feel like that's going to be very scary if you're those 2 teammates in the 20 and the 45. Because like you said, Ian, at the start of the show, in the first half of this race, you do not want to be alone when you come down pit road on a green flag circumstance, because if you're alone, number 1, you have no draft, which means you have no speed. And if you have no speed, then good luck trying to keep up with the rest of the field as we stay side by side. Cantwell now with a solid charge up. More trucks up the top. Remember the 3 and the 2, Wade and Cinnamon, they have decided to go back up to the top, and they're going to add another truck here, and that is our Stage 2 winner, Joey Doucette in 16, so he's back in this game. And Adam Cantwell side by side with Rivera for the race lead.
Yeah, and that's something that Rivera's going to have to watch as well with Shepard is, yeah, you have to watch behind you and keep those trucks behind you while you're maintaining a lead, but you also got to see when anybody else is pitting. But by the time that you recognize that they're pitting, you might already be past the pit lane commit line and you have no way to get down to pit road. So it's going to put, like you said, a difficult choice in their mind that do we try to go and pull people with us? Because if they go by themselves, they've been fast all night long together, but with the rest of the pack, I don't think they'll catch up.
And what's also going to matter here is that we are approaching some slower lap traffic. The first truck that they will encounter, I believe, will be the 5 of Jacob Klinkhart. And there are some other trucks up in front that are right now, I believe, nose to tail. That is the 99 Devin Painter and the number 37 of Raul Meza. We saw him in one of our first crashes tonight, pretty much our first crash tonight. 32 laps down, he is in 32nd. So he is just at least trying to get as many points as possible based on a majority of the field, a good amount that have already gotten out of this race based on the big crashes we've seen so far tonight in this Triple M pulling 250 as Cantwell officially clears for the race lead, will not duck down low, will stay in front of Steven Thomas, and Rivera will have another chance to respond here coming out of turn 4. And basically this is just going to be, I guess, our final stretch. 30 laps to go, and this will be the last time that we will see basically anybody maybe like this before we see pit road, maybe.
I would think so. I think that you're correct, but it's going to be quite fascinating if we stay green this entire time with that stop in the middle to see how the pack kind of congeals back up and races for the lead, or if we're going to see a little bit of strung out racing for the win here tonight from Daytona.
And so we're staying tucked up together. Remember the 16 to Joey Doucette, talked about him closing in on the main pack. Well, he's fallen back, and you'll have help from the 4 Adam Newbert, the 16 Doucette being our stage 2 winner. Our stage 1 Tyler Dittmer, he is on pit road and he is many laps down, so I don't think Dittmer will be in contention for this race lead or race win at all in the final 30 laps, and Joey Doucette is going to hold out hope as the last stage winner, as we would call it, to try and get closer to the front, although he's got some nose damage, and maybe that also means engine damage on behalf of that Silverado, so that may not be good news. I think Cantwell is starting to slow down here. The momentum's starting to shift, and I can see it already, Ian. Steven Thomas finds space, goes down to the inside, and that may be the first of many before our green flag stop to end stage number 3.
Yeah, now we're seeing the 82 move to the outside with the support of the 8 there, and a little bit of a big shot there, but able to move towards the lead as now we see the 8 dive down to the bottom. So yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of moves here, maybe people positioning themselves, moving farther back in the pack and trying to link it up with their pit groups.
And this will be crucial as well because we're closing in the final 28 laps in this race. And yes, these guys theoretically can go longer. They're closing in on lap number 20 on their stint, at least for the ones up front. For the ones that did come down pit road, I think the closest or the one who's pitted the most recent is 11 laps, now 12 laps. That is Ed Osborne in the 42. But they are setting up a pit road sequence because now they're within 28 laps. They know they're pretty much in that fuel window to get to the end of this race. And when you do come down pit road and when you get out, you also do want to have enough time to cycle back to the front and have enough time to get back in a comfortable position, get yourself packed up once again, and then run for the finish. You don't want to be in a place where you pit so close to the end of the race in the checkered flag that you basically have no time to gather yourself back up, build the momentum once again, and then go for P1 in the checkered flag to win this Triple M pulling 250. So that's going to be interesting to see out of turn 4. Nobody coming down pit road, but I think the signs are telling Ian these guys are ready for it when necessary.
Yeah, I think that's indicative of the long freight train we're seeing along the bottom right now as everybody's just kind of doing their math and seeing how long they can get. You got to keep in mind that we have, I believe it's 2 attempts at a green, white, checkered finish. So our pit window is about 30 to 34 laps, maybe add a few onto that there. So for the green, white, checkered finish. So I don't think we're going to see guys maybe come right now unless they're banking on this to go green all the way to the end or maybe just 1 green, white, checkered. But we're going to see it in the next couple of laps for sure.
That's a good point. Only 2 attempts at a green, white, checkered, but there's a lap truck in the middle of it and made contact with your leader, Jose Luis Rivera, and also gets Dana Shepard all out of whack, weaves in the middle of traffic, but somehow we stay green coming at 26 laps to go.
Yeah, because if the yellow came out there, it just threw what we talked about for the last 5 minutes out the window.
I am not sure what happened there. With the slow truck in the middle of the track, the 47, James Morris, got right in front of the leaders. I think didn't really know what lane they were going to choose going into the corner and just stacked the whole field up. And now Adam Cantwell, with help from Steven Thomas, they're going to close up on the 20 of Rivera and take the race lead away, as Thomas will go back to the inside, but the 8 of Cantwell shuts the door.
And we were talking about everybody all formed up at the bottom getting ready to pit, but now we're back to racing to position, and that's just because of the wild card that was thrown in there that nobody was expecting, and it gave the spot to try to gain some valuable track position, and the 8 of Cantwell takes advantage, moves his way into the lead of this race.
An unbelievable set of circumstances, and I brought it up earlier in the race. If you're that North Central Racing Club driver of Jose Luis Rivera, the last thing you would want to see is to have your teammate get ripped from your hands on the 45 of Dana Shepard, and that's exactly what happened. Shepard falling all the way back to 14th in a second pack of trucks with Justin Lumpkin, Adam Newbert, Trey Pitts in the 27, and they're all trying to figure themselves out for position amongst their own group. But it's Adam Cantwell, the 8 machine, to the front of the field, and Ed Osborne trying to lead the outside lane back to the front.
Yeah, that was a very strange circumstance indeed. You see the whole pack coming on the bottom, and I'm not exactly sure if they kind of misjudged where the pack was coming from or where it was going, but yeah, that definitely shook things up for sure as we see a top lane forming now.
We'll see if anybody comes down pit road. The answer again is no, and it looks like maybe this entire front pack is going to look to pit together. Ed Osborne, now the newest Charger up at the front of the field on the outside lane, the driver from Jonesville, Virginia. He's one of the free agents in this field, so he's kind of one of the free floating drivers in this field amongst the entirety of drivers with their teams, so he's earning some respect out on the track in that Mountain Dew throwback paint scheme on a Silverado here tonight from Daytona. And the 42 getting some help here, this time from the 1 of Jason Morales. And Morales started all the way back in 30th, and I think it's a trend that we're seeing. Everybody who started pretty far in the field are finding their way up front with a chance to win this thing in the final 24 laps. As Cantwell will clear, and we'll see if they come down this time.
And we've been talking about teammates so much in this race, but we haven't really touched on what happens, Kenneth, if you don't have a teammate like the 42 of Osborne does. And really, that kind of adds a whole new dynamic to the pack racing. Is you got to make friends as you go. You don't really have any predefined friends, so to speak, or any team orders if there are any out there tonight. But look at what he's doing right now, able to drive his way up to the lead here on the second pack. And it'll be interesting to see what they do in the next couple of laps here to try to file down.
The problem is, if he comes down pit road by himself, he may have some takers with him, maybe, but for the most part, the teams are going to cling together as much as possible. And I think back immediately to the real-life NASCAR Cup Series with the manufacturers. You see all the Toyotas pitting together on the super speedways. You see all the Chevys coming in at one point. You see all the Fords coming in at one point. So maybe all the teams are just trying to figure out the best way possible to get to the end of this race and coming to the final 22 laps as they come out of turn 4 to the tri-oval, the 18 degrees of banking to the start-finish line. None of them will take a trip for the final batch of service to get us to the end of this Triple M pulling 250. Now here comes Osborne with a good shove at a turn 4 for Morales. That'll be a side-by-side move for the race lead, but again, it will fall to the wayside of Adam Cantwell. Cantwell will hold on to the lead. There's a lap truck up in front of the field. Hopefully no drama this time with this truck, but the outside lane breaking up just a little bit as a result.
Yeah, and I was about to say as well, somebody's going to have to make a decision here, and it looks like the lap truck is going to stay to the high side. But we were talking earlier how this track is barely wide enough for 3 wide, and when you're a lap truck and there's such a speed gap between you and the rest of the pack coming like that, it is sometimes intimidating, and you're trying to find a way to find your way and weave your way back into that pack and possibly work your way up into a position where, if you can take advantage of the lucky dog position. So important to stay out of the way of the leaders, but then try to file in as soon as you can if you're in that position.
And we have 3 trucks right now, 20 through 22nd, that are fighting for that proverbial lucky dog spot if we do get a yellow in the final 21 laps of this race. Michael McKinnon is currently in the lucky dog spot. He is just inside of the top 20. Remember, we saw the 13 get involved in a crash with the 27 of Trey Pitts. That was really our most recent caution of the night. Jeffrey Sickles was involved in an earlier caution before that. The 22 machine is 21st, also 1 lap down. And then the last one fighting for the lucky dog is coming out of turn 4 right now in a pack of 3. That is Devin Painter in the 99. He's got some work to do if a yellow does come out, and will not fall to his favor. So we'll keep tabs on that as we cross the line. The final 20 laps approaching us in the Triple M Pulling 250 for the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series. And it's Cantwell Racing, the most fuel out in front. Stephen Thomas in second. Jose Luis Rivera racking up the top 3.
And something I noticed now, down in 17th, you see Doucette. He's worked his way back up into almost the top 15 now, and he's going to try to make a push here with 20 laps to go, our Stage 2 winner.
Yes, Joey Doucette getting the most points there in Stage 2. Again, he does have some front-end nose damage, and I'm not sure if that's going to affect him too much, but we have seen before on the super speedway races where the drivers who have front nose damage don't like to be the people getting pushed, they like to be the pushers. So maybe we see Doucette stay in traffic for as long as seemingly possible. I believe there was a chirp over the radio from the likes of Stephen Thomas, and I almost believed for a moment it was going to be a call, Ian, to come down pit road, but I guess it was just a different side conversation, so they will stay out on track an extra lap.
And there might be a little bit of mind games going on as well. You might say pit this time over the radio and your teammates hear it, but you have a code that actually means that we're going to pit next time and try to draw some people out of strategy and maybe gain some positions that way. So it's always interesting to see when these pit stops are coming up, especially in the iRacing service where you can talk to all the drivers over the voice chat, some of the mind games that kind of go down, especially on the money stop.
That is true, and you could throw some other drivers off. Let's say if you don't want to work with a certain amount of drivers, let's say if the 23 doesn't want to work with Cantwell, which obviously doesn't seem to be the case, but let's say if he wants to try something different to get ahead of that A truck and not have him in range, maybe he could say, pitting this time, Cantwell tries to think because he is looking in his rearview mirror for everybody to come down, and then if it doesn't happen and he comes down, then it's just a huge mess for the driver who gets faked out. Oh, obviously that has not happened yet as we close in on the final 18 laps here in this race from Daytona. And now the field really officially single file. There's the pack of 3 that I talked about, and officially Devin Painter is going to be out of reach for the lucky dog. That is 2 laps down, given to the 99. So now bring it down to only 2, with the 13 and McKinnon still holding that proverbial lucky dog spot. Osborne is still holding out up top, so I'm not sure whether, Ian, this is just a call to stay out here if the guys on the bottom come in, or if it's just to keep himself in clean air for the most part. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that group of lap cars there really killed the momentum of the top line for now. They've kind of got strung back together and they're working, but that also might be the group they're trying to pit with as well. And they're just looking for an opening when that bottom line goes to try to work their way in there and pit together.
And that may be the case. Maybe it could also be for track position because they got a good run out of the trial with the 18 degrees of banking, and so Osborne will have a challenge for the race lead, but with some new drivers to help. And we talked about Dana Shepard getting shoved out of the way, weaved all over the track. Now he is back up to 3rd on that outside lane, P6. So he has found his North Racing Central Club teammate, or North Central Racing Club, as I should say, his teammate in Jose Luis Rivera. We'll see if they tuck together nose to tail once more, but for now, Shepard is staying behind Brady LaBeouf in the number 9 machine. And so they're 3 trucks strong over the top, still holding control up there on the banking. And Stephen Thomas again chirping over the radio. Could this be a stop to pit road? We're again waiting another lap, Ian. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to fare and what lap they want to strike. Is there a certain window you want to hit in the final 16?
Yeah, and you saw a little bit of mind games there. You saw a few trucks fake to pit road, but nobody has taken the bait yet, and we haven't seen any of these drivers up at the front try to make their way onto pit road. But now you see Brady LaBeouf there in the 9 truck on the outside, kind of getting hung out to dry a little bit. He might be trying to find a way to get down on the bottom line and kind of pit road as well.
I think you make it a good point there with the 42 of Ed Osborne, as now Cantwell will look for the race lead once again, although he'll have no help. The 23 of Stephen Thomas will stay with him, I believe. Maybe Osborne was holding outside just because he can have a chance at the race lead, and obviously you want to be the first coming onto pit road. You want to lead the charge coming in, and so the 42 will come out on the banking in turn 4. The 8 of Cantwell will pick up LaBeouf in the number 9 machine, and again, some drivers weave down underneath that double yellow line, but they will not take bait just yet. And by the way, we've got the teammates back together again. The 45 and the 20 make them 4th and 5th on the racetrack.
And you mentioned earlier, Kenneth, I'm surprised they're stretching this fuel window this long. I mean, maybe these guys are expecting a few green-white checker finishes, and at Daytona, I wouldn't put it out too far out of the realm of possibility. But you mentioned that you don't want to pit too far in this race because it's going to be hard to pack back up and really make a push to the end here in the final 15 laps. So it's going to be interesting to see once these guys finally do make the decision to come to pit road, how it shakes out from there.
And before this race, I mean, you had asked the league admins and such what the fuel window was for these trucks as Cantwell gets very close to Dana Shepard there coming out of turn number 4. Cantwell is approaching 35 laps on the stand, and now here come the leaders. Cantwell will stay out another lap, so will Dana Shepard, but Rivera, Osborne, Stevens, and a majority of the rest of the field now coming in for their final stop here from Daytona.
And it's so vital not to speed as you try to slow the truck down from about 180 miles an hour down to, I believe, 65 miles an hour is the pit road speed here, maybe 70. But it's so hard to slow these trucks down, especially transitioning off that section of banking. And you saw a few drivers lock it up and spin their rear tires a little bit. And it's important to conserve your tires as well when you're coming down pit road because you may not be changing them for this stop. So it's really, really important not to spin them or put a flat spot on them going later into the laps of this race.
Maybe a penalty assessed to the 26 Cody Knott. Hit the cone going on a pit road. You mentioned the mistake of speeding. You don't want to do that, and I think Cody Knott just got nabbed with one as here comes the rest of the field that stayed out. Cantwell leading the charge. Robert Richards trying to dive underneath one of the Ford F-150s there in the middle. That is Haney in the middle of that 3-wide pack with a buff in the 9. There goes the 8 of Cantwell onto his stall, the 48. And the 45 of Shepard will be the first one there. There comes the rest of the field into their stalls. Shepard will find his red box and we'll come to a stop, so that should, I believe, get us our final batch of trucks going in. And Zach Hardwick in the 24 just about parked it there on the inside just before the entrance of pit road. So I believe Hardwick is out of this race. But the biggest note of concern is that Steven Thomas, who was in that first group that came down the final time on pit road, he's all by himself in P14 on the racetrack as they try to get out onto the access road at a turn 2. There's a look at Cantwell in the 8 machine, and the whole field just getting separated. This is not going to help at all, regrouping in the final 10 or so laps in the race.
Yeah, pretty clean stops altogether from all these drivers. We'll see how the merges back onto the racetrack goes. But yeah, this really shuffles everything up now with 12 laps to go this time by, and we'll see what drivers can get themselves linked up. And at this point, it's basically, can you make the largest pack that you possibly can and just hope for the best, because this really just puts everybody all over the racetrack and there's no definite pack anymore.
That's definitely true. I believe our leader will be Robert Richards here in the 48 with help from the 43, that is Blake Levine. In his truck, Justin Lumpkin, the 3rd truck in there. And actually, yes, as we cross the line, Dana Shepard does get past him. He's all by himself. So now bring a new race leader and a new set of trucks that we haven't really seen all night long apart from that 48. The 43 and the 87, we haven't talked about their names at all, practically all race long. And now here they are with a chance to win this race in the final 12, but they may have a say here from Keith Haney in the 78. Help from the 2 and the 3, Cinnamon and Wade, side by side for the lead going into turn 3.
The veterans in the top lane and the rookies in the bottom lane, and really that's a smart move by those guys to stay out there out on the bottom side, make those guys up top work for it and make them pass you. And really that's the best thing you can do right now is just try to run the bottom of the racetrack, hug that yellow line, and try to hold on for 11 more laps.
And Ted Wade, our Rookie of the Year from last season, a $200 prize assessed to him. Wade, the 3rd truck on the very outside lane in his 2nd full-time season in this NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series, could make a statement if he can get to victory lane tonight from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. And now, finally, Ian, we have no woes about pit road, about fuel making it to the end, maybe about green-white checkers, but for the most part, the field is safe on fuel, and it's all about just racing your way to the end as Robert Richards clears ahead in turn 3.
And we talked all night long about putting yourself in that position in the final laps, the final 10 or so laps to win. And all night long, we saw Chris Cinnamon slowly push his way all the way to the front and now finds himself in 4th position. Winner here at Daytona last year. And so you know he has a little bit of experience under his belt making his way to the front. Will it pay off on the last lap for that final pass, though, is the question.
And there are 3 trucks clinging on to this first pack. The 16, our stage winner, Joey Doucette. He is now into 7th. Ed Osborne is up in 8th. Stephen Thomas, we saw him lagging back on this pack of trucks. He is finally caught up in 9th. We'll see if he loses the draft, but fortunately, he will stay tucked behind that 42, and in fact, he'll go outside, so make it 4 trucks on the high side behind the number 2 of Ted Wade. Keith Haney trying to stay even with the 48, and that's a big mistake out of Richards there. Nab the apron, the double yellow line. That's a big no-no, going as high as 180 miles per hour here at Daytona, and that's going to give Haney to the lead for a moment.
Yeah, and it's relatively easy to drive at Daytona if you're by yourself. It's a pretty simple track, but when you're in a pack like that and you're watching your mirror, it's so easy to touch that apron down in the turns, and that's a really good way to spin your truck out and end your night and possibly the entire field's night early.
And you do not want to make that crucial mistake when you are just 9 laps away from a potential opening season race victory. They've added 2 more trucks to this tally, make it 11 total. Ed Osborne had brought in the number 51 of Tony Smith, and now bringing the 9 of Brady LaBeouf. We saw him on the outside all by himself right before pretty much the entire field had gone down to pit road. So some of the same names on that last stretch before our pit strategy call are now finding their way back in it. But the 48, Robert Richards, coming out of turn 4, will weave up high in front of the 43, but will stay down low and will lead with 8 laps to go in the Triple M Pulling Truck Series and the Triple M Pulling 250.
And the dynamic of being the leader of this race really changes when you get within 10 laps of the checkered flag, because you've been possibly riding that bottom line all night long, but then you start to see the runs happen on the high side, and it's really hard not to move your truck up there and try to make a block, and sometimes it's the right move to make. So it's really, you have all these choices as a driver when you're coming to the checkered flag as the leader, but that's also when you see some of the incidents that Daytona is so well known for, Kenneth.
And we talk about buffers, especially on that strategy call, where I was concerned that the field was going to pit so close to the end of the race that by the time they tried to get themselves back momentum bound, they would be so late to the party that by the time they get to the checkered flag, it would be all said and done. But you want no buffer if you're in this pack. We're coming down to 7 laps to go, and now I got to ask Ian, if you're any one of these guys, Haney, even Cinnamon, you think of Lothian, Wade, Lumpkin, all these guys buried deep underneath the top 2 of Haney and Richards, when do you make the move?
I mean, if you're on the bottom side there, especially if you're in that maybe first 3 or 4 rows, it's really hard to make any move but kind of file in line with the pack right now. If you're some of the guys that are back farther in the pack, I think you make the jump to the high side inevitably, but really it's just trying to time that pass just right. And I think the only line that we'll possibly see is maybe a 3rd line up high, but that's when things start to get really dicey.
And also, we haven't seen 3 wide in this race all evening long, which has surprised me for a moment. And now we finally have a move coming to 6 laps to go. The 43 says, I am done pushing you, 48. I want to go to the lead. Blake Lothian to the front for a moment as they reach the trial with help from Haney. I think this push will solidify at least a side-by-side movement here with the 48. In fact, just a little bit, Richards will have the momentum going into turn 1 to keep his nose out ahead, but now make it 4 trucks again on that outside lane. And by the way, Joey Doucette was hanging around top 15 after his damage got assessed, and after he won stage 2, he's now into the top 5, 3rd truck on the inside lane.
Yeah, and it's about the top 11 trucks right now that form this first pack. 12th through 18th are back in another pack, about 11 sects back of this pack right now. So if you're these trucks up front, you've put yourself in that position, and I think any of these 11 trucks have a chance to win, Kenneth.
And you were, Ian, a part of that call there as they go 3 wide now, and they almost make contact. That was Haney threading the middle, and LaBeouf had to weave out of the way to avoid a potential caution within 5 laps to go. Haney switches down low. We now only have 3 trucks on the outside lane, and Ian, you had the privilege of covering the clash just a little while back. They came crashing to the line. They had a pack similar to this. So what do you expect now that everybody's going all over the place in the final handful of laps?
Well, that's the fun thing about Daytona, is that you never know what to expect. You're going to see 2-3 wide racing. You're going to see a lot of guys darting in and out of the pack, as we see now here going down the super stretch, going into turn 3. So really, this is the time where you got to go. You got to make your move if you're going to make it, and we're going to start seeing it.
Lumpkin sideways into Doucette, but we save it and we stay green.
And Richards
How did they not wreck?
I have no idea. Richards is going to get a big run here, but that's probably going to be to his detriment, because this pack is going to form up behind him and blow right past him.
And that's going to be Stephen Thomas, but he's side by side with Brady LaBeouf, so they are still trying to figure themselves out in terms of this second pack. Haney side by side now with Lumpkin. Everybody in a free-for-all in the final 4 laps. They are now gridlocked, 2nd and 3rd, trying to catch up to the 48 out of turn 2.
And what's the 48 going to do when the rest of the pack gets to him? He's going to try to hold the bottom line, but that's going to check everybody up on the bottom line. I don't think that's going to work out, and somehow they all stay off of each other, Kenneth.
Haney moves down low, now finds a nose in for the race lead underneath the line. 9 truck of LaBeouf. Here comes Tony Smith in the 51, the 42, the 3, the 2. 5 trucks versus 3 coming out of turn 4 for 3 laps to go from Daytona.
And there's a little bit of lap traffic coming up. You saw one of the drivers there pull into the pits, and it looks like the rest of them are going to step aside and let these guys race with 3 laps to go here. This is where you start some of the big moves, and we might see that final yellow comes out that pushes this race into a green-white checker, Kenna.
2 lap trucks miscommunicating here. Now they finally go up top the 11. Ryan Miz in the 37, the 11 of Derek Kilgore, and they are still even for the lead. Haney down low, LeBeouf up top in the 9. Smith trying to look for a third lane, potentially in a turn 3, but it will not work. It will stay to the rear end of that Chevrolet Silverado. Richards again taps the double yellow line as the lap trucks end up on the rail. I think Osborne got kicked out of this entire battle. He falls back to P9, but they will come out of turn 4 for the last 5 miles in this Triple M pulling 250. LeBeouf versus Haney at the front of the field.
And LeBeouf is able to steam ahead to a little bit of a lead, but the 48 gave a huge shot to Haney there last time going into the 3, but he's going to dip up. Looks like he tried to dip up to the high line there, but didn't quite work out for him.
A big move there by both LeBeouf and Smith. They go to the bottom side of the racetrack in front of Keith Haney, so that leaves Lethien and the number 2 of Ted Wade up at the top of the racetrack. Now make it 4 trucks again, as there will be another one. Actually, that is the 3 of Cinnamon, rather, in front of that pack. Wade is the 3rd truck in there. He joins, now bring in Thomas, now bring in the 11 truck of Kilgore, who is a lap down, but somehow caught up with the pack. They will come out of turn 4, and Brady LeBeouf will see the white flag for the final lap in the Triple M pulling 250.
And that top side had a huge run coming down the backstretch last time by, and I think they're in position to do it again as a lap car will move up to the high side. So it's going to be a shootout coming to the finish like always here at Daytona.
Back to turn 1. Here comes Chris Cinnamon with a big shove out of the 43, Blake Lothian, to get him to the race lead for a moment. Still locked in for P1 at a turn 2 on the back straightaway for the final time.
And both of these cars in the second row just beating the bumpers off the leaders, trying to push them as far as they can and set themselves in the position to make the move coming off 4.
Going into turn 3, Chris Cinnamon, defending winner at Daytona, but also trying to defend his season 4 title. He'll be even with the 9 of LeBeouf coming out of turn 4. They make some contact in the middle of the field, but it will be a drag race. Here comes Lethien to make it 3 wide, but Chris Cinnamon to the line with LeBeouf. Chris Cinnamon wins the Triple M pulling 250 and defends his Daytona crown.
And the rest of the trucks just pile across the line trying to get as many positions as they can. But look at that. Last year's winner, Chris Cinnamon, able to make his way to the front again and put himself in the perfect position on the last lap to be there. You saw him fanning out 4, even 5 wide behind him. He was able to keep his composure and get his truck across the line first.
Chris Cinnamon started 8th in a field and a top 10 that had drivers starting basically 10th or worse, apart from only one, and that was your stage 2 winner in the last spot in the top 10, Joey Doucette in the 16. But Chris Cinnamon gets to victory lane to kick off season 5 basically the way he left it off in season 4. Ian, a beautiful job to hold the outside. As we take a look at the replay, this was basically the last lap back straightaway.
Yeah, and you can see there both the 51 and the 41 just beating the bumpers. I'm sorry, 43 just beating the bumpers off of these trucks here. And Cinnamon there a little bit loose. I thought they were going to spin out there and it was going to be a big wreck there out of 4, but everybody able to hold on to it and then fans out. But Cinnamon just able to get the last little push here at the end from the 2 truck to push him across the line.
That was a saving grace. Ted Wade giving the bumper to the 3 of Chris Cinnamon, because the 43 of Blake Lethien, he tried to make it 3 wide, but got put in the wall accidentally and then got split 3 with Wade going down low to stick with the fellow Chevrolet right in front of him. And we talked about the 2 and the 3, Cinnamon and Wade working practically well together for this entire race. Both of them up front motorsports teammates, and they end up both in the top 3 here tonight in the final laps of this Triple M pulling 250. Another look at the run out of turn 4. They almost made contact. You're right, Ian. I thought they were going around. At some point, I thought the top 2 were going to go straight to that outside wall, but they didn't make contact. They maintained straight. There's a look at the 43 trying to go 3 wide. Cinnamon gives a slight block, chases up the track, but follows right in the middle to Barney the Flagman and to the checkered flag for his first win in the opening race of season 5. And then they wreck after the start-finish line, so a relatively clean race. And there's some chaos right after. One truck going up end over end. That is Steven Thomas in the 23. Thomas, though, locks up the top 5 here tonight from Daytona Beach, Florida. Let's take a look at your full field results, see exactly where every single driver finished at the end of 100 grueling laps from the World Center of Racing. Chris Cinnamon to victory lane by 31 hundredths of a second. He ends up in P1, capping off, and the Canadian gets to victory lane once again. Brady LeBoeuf had a great run near the end of this race. We didn't talk about him in the first half, but we were saying his name a lot in the second half of tonight's race. He ends up in second. Ted Wade, the Upfront Motorsports teammate, he ends up locking up the top 3. We'll try to talk to all 3 of them before our coverage is over here tonight on Racecraft TV. Tony Smith in the 51, had to give credit to the 51 tonight after starting 11th. He came out of nowhere too in that final stint. He is in P4. Stephen Thomas went flipping after the checkered flag. He ends up locking up the top 5 after starting 35th tonight. An unbelievable move up to the field, and you can say the same for the driver who tried to make it 3 wide at the end of the race, Brake Lothian. In the 43, he started 33rd. He ends up P6. Keith Haney in the 78 had a nice charge near the end, but could not get to the race win. He finishes 7th, though. Robert Richards in the 48, he ends up in 8th. Justin Lumpkin in the 87 started 25th. He ends up 9th. And Joey Doucette, our Stage 2 winner, Ian, locks up the top 10.
Yeah, and moving on, finishing just outside the top 10, we have Brian Abbott, who led this race for a short time with nose damage. So all things considered, a good run for him. Adam Norbert, 12th position. Trey Pitts finishes 13. Ed Osborne in the 42 unfortunately got in the wall in the closing laps of this race. He'll finish P14. Jose Luis Rivera finishes P15. Jason Rivales in the 16th position. Dana Shepard in the 45 truck comes across 17th. Adam Cantwell in the 8 comes across in 18th. Cody Knott comes across 19th, and finishing out the top 20, Kenneth, we have Michael McKinnon.
We'll look at the final batch of drivers that finalized this field here tonight from Daytona. Jeffrey Sickles is 2 laps down in 21st, followed by Derek Kilgore. He got lapped basically the end of that race and stood with that front pack at the end of it all. He finishes 21st, or rather 22nd rather. Devin Painter in the 99. Wow, Devin Painter ends up 23rd. Zach Hardwick started on pole tonight. He parked it out of turn 4. I think downshifted in the middle of the corner, had a problem there. He ends up 24th. Raul Meza, he had a strong start tonight, but unfortunately got caught up in a huge wreck in the corner, ends up racking up the top 25. Jacob Klinkhart in the number 5 is 26. Tyler Dittmer, we saw him win stage 1, but did not have any flashing moments after, unfortunately. In the rest of the race, he ends up 27th. Lucas Whitehead also had a strong start to the race in the 88 truck, but he is 39 laps down in 28th. Huck Winnington in the 00, he is 29th, and Brandon Bullock in the 17 will be the last driver in the top 30, 42 laps down. And here are the final drivers to P37. James Haney in the 55. We saw him had a great race for a while and got up in a big wreck. Matt Rudder in the 33 ends up 32nd. James Morse in the 47 is 59 laps down, 33rd. Then Christopher Blanchard, Tim Hammond, and Jonathan Munda, all the drivers that basically started this race. TJ Moore, it was race control and obviously did not start tonight's Triple M pulling 250. So it'll be our time to take it down trackside and to Butt Kicker Victory Lane, where we have caught up with the driver of the 3, Chris Cinnamon, defending his win at Daytona as the Season 4 champion and starts Season 5 in the best way possible. Chris, I want to talk about the move up through the field in the final half of this race. Of course, pit strategy meant a lot for basically you and everybody else to get to the end here in this 250 miler, but walk us through how you were able to survive in the final laps to win.
Oh man, what a race that was. That's our strategy though. It's no secret up front. We like to hang back at the end and just come forward at the end when the time's right. And actually, I was impressed with this race. A lot of green flag racing. The guys were really clean. Not a lot of cautions. It was a fun race.
A lot of fun, and I can imagine a lot of fun to be had with your teammate for Upfront Motorsports, Ted Wade. How instrumental was Wade in your progress up to the front of the field? Because it looked like in the last half of the race, you two were practically inseparable, and then you both were pushing each other to the end, and Wade giving you that final shove to get you ahead of Brady LeBoeuf for the race win.
Oh man, yeah, all of us up front, we work together so well and definitely help each other through the race. But Ted, he gets a huge assist. I got to go back and see that replay, but I don't know if I would have won that race if he didn't give me that final boot about 20 feet from the finish line.
So that push by Ted Wade gets you this win, and of course you are the defending winner here tonight from the virtual World Center of Racing Daytona International Speedway. You come off as the Season 4 champion. walk us through how that feels, because you get the crown in season 4, you get to have your head up high over the rest of the field, being the trophy holder, and then you back it up in season 5, winning the opening race. How does it feel to not only come off of that season 4 championship with a lot of confidence, but to go in here and get your first win in the first race of season 5?
Oh, I tell you, it feels absolutely amazing. The talent we have in this group is second to none. Just to win a race is so hard with this group. So, championship last year, I'm still in shock over it, still a little speechless. To come back tonight, I don't know what to say. I'll take it. Definitely loving it, and a lot of props to this group here. So fun racing in this league.
You know what? I think if you made a pro and con list of your last couple of months from season 4 to season 5, there would be no cons at all. You would have all pros. Unbelievable start to the season here in 2022. And off of this win, of course, on behalf of our team here at Racecraft TV, Chris, want to send you a huge congratulations for your win in the Triple M Pulling 250. And of course, looking forward to see you compete in the rest of the season 5 campaign. And we'll hope to see you next week at the Homestead of Miami Speedway. Again, congratulations.
Hey, appreciate that big time. Before I go, I just want to give a shout out. This year, I got a brand new sponsor, Dan's Top Notch Heating and Cooling out of Washington State. So glad to have him on the truck this season. Of course, a Bruzy Racewear and Over the Top Designs with John Hedrick. He's doing awesome paint jobs all year long for us, and he's the guy who put this team together. So shout out to all those guys.
Chris Cinnamon, your winner here tonight from the virtual Daytona International Speedway, and takes the Triple M Pulling 250. Chris Cinnamon with the checkered flag tonight, but we have our second place finisher. Just a couple of moments. Ian Fisher, you're caught up with the Mission 1 esports driver, or Brady LaBeouf in the 9.
And Brady, you put yourself in a position all night long to be on the front row, coming to the checkered flag. You see it there, but come up just a few feet short. What did you see out of your windshield?
Oh, nothing but the track in front of me. But I went back and looked at the replay, and I could see a couple of mistakes that I made there on the last lap. But I just had my teammate behind me, Tony Smith. I got to get a shout out to him, man. He pushed me all night long, and I wouldn't have been able to be up there without him. So thank you, Tony. But no, I just thought we was in good shape until I seen the top coming on the back straightaway on that last lap, and I tried to pinch Chris up to the top, but then it said 3 wide, and I seen Blake was going up there, so I didn't really want to wreck us at all. So I went back down to the bottom, hopefully get a push, but Chris just got me there by, I guess, a couple of inches.
And a couple inches is sometimes all it takes, unfortunately, at a place like Daytona. But earlier in the race, you made the final pit stop to put yourself in a position to battle at the end here. Was there any discussion before the race with you and your teammates about what strategy you were going to take? Or was that something that you just kind of decided as the race played out?
Yeah, typically we'll talk about it at the conclusion of stage 2. We had a number that we were shooting for, but that kind of all changed the way the cautions fell. And we went in there and topped off thinking that we might be able to be good the rest of the way, but then realized we were going to be 3 laps short. So then we had a number in mind, but then when we seen up front start pitting and everything, we chose to push that number up and pit with them, so we didn't get left behind.
And it ended up being the choice you made tonight that at least got you to a P2 finish. Maybe not the result you wanted, but still you can't be upset with a P2 finish going into the rest of the championship.
Oh no, it's a great start to the year. It was a great race overall, and I'm happy with second, but man, it still sucks.
Well, hopefully a better week next week is at least maybe one position better at Homestead, a mile-and-a-half track, but variable banking. Any thoughts going in there?
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be another good race. It's all going to be about tire management. I know we were there just a couple of weeks ago, towards the end of season 4, but it's going to be an entirely different race. Instead of racing at night, we'll be racing during the day over there, so it should be a good one.
Yeah, a whole different animal, especially going into the week 2 of this long schedule we have here on the NASRA Triple M Truck Pulling Series. Oh, thanks for stopping by and taking a few minutes to have a few words with here, Brady. And on behalf of all of us here on Racecraft TV, congratulations on your P2 finish.
Thank you, and thank you guys. Thank you, NASRA, Triple M Pulling, the wife and kids, and all my teammates. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Brady. And I think, Kenneth, he's going to be one to watch out for, especially going into the rest of this season.
Indeed, a dark horse throughout the rest, throughout most of this race, and then came up to finish second, of course, just short of the win, but I think that's going to mean a lot. And for Upfront Motorsports, I think this Daytona race means a lot. We're caught up with third place in the number 2 truck, Ted Wade. And Ted, I think you gave the finishing shot to the 3, Chris Cinnamon, your teammate, to give Cinnamon the win. You end up third here tonight from Daytona. Walk us through how it was working with your Upfront Motorsports teammate all race long and the nature of this race as a whole.
Oh yeah, it was a pretty wild finish here. I knew coming to that checker that I was just going to try to hit Chris as hard as I could and shoot him across the line. But we do some strategy every super speedway race, and it just worked out for us this time.
Strategy, of course, a big part of that. And were there any large concerns going into that strategy? Because, of course, there were only really 2 cautions, 2 crashes that caused yellows on the racetrack, and that last stint pretty much went completely green. Do you guys have any concerns around going into stage 3 and how things were going to pan out, especially with the fact that there was some aggressive driving up at the front, and there was also some confusion and some mishaps happening along the way as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. We were a little concerned that it actually might go green the whole way, and if we laid back too far, wasn't gonna be able to catch back up with the pack. But yeah, there were some moments there. I don't know how we didn't bring a yellow out, but we managed to make it through everything pretty clean and come out on top.
So you survive in the final laps with your teammate Chris Cinnamon. You end up third, and with Upfront Motorsports, I can only imagine that this is going to be a huge momentum booster going into Homestead, Miami, and the rest of the season. First of all, a 2-part question. What are your thoughts about Homestead, Miami, 1 week from tonight, staying in the state of Florida? And what does this finish mean for Upfront Motorsports and yourself as a driver going into a track like Homestead and the rest of the campaign?
We're still trying to carry the momentum from last year, and hopefully we can just keep it rolling and pull off a good finish. I don't mind Homestead. We did pretty good the end of the last season there. I think I learned a few things, and I believe it's going to be a little different this go around.
Well, Homestead Miami Speedway is going to provide a very interesting race in 1 week time. But coming out of Daytona, Ted Wade, of course, on behalf of our team here at Racecraft TV, want to send you a large congratulations on the Upfront Motorsports 1-3 and your third place finish here tonight in the Triple M Pulling 250. Again, congratulations, and we wish you the best of luck going into Homestead.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I just like to give my sponsors a shout out here. Dan's Top Notch Heating and Cooling, Bruzy Racewear, Over the Top Designs, John Hedrick, you guys here at Racecraft, and Triple M Pulling. Thanks, guys.
So Ted Wade for Upfront Motorsports gets a P3. He is our last driver in the interview segment of tonight's broadcast, and we get to take it back up into the air-conditioned booth, or virtual booth, rather, of Daytona International Speedway. And wow, Ian, a great race from beginning to end. We had a lot of solid racing from almost 3 wide to some weaving and bobbing, but ultimately we had a beautiful run to the finish. Side by side, the 2 Chevrolets, Cinnamon and LaBeouf, and Cinnamon crossing the line for his first win and to take us through basically our first race, Season 5.
Yeah, I think we checked all the Daytona boxes. We had 3 wide racing. We had a 4 wide battle for the lead coming to the checkered flag. We had the big one. We had pit strategy. We had fuel strategy, but we talked about it all night long, Kenneth. We talked about the importance of teammates, and that was all the difference tonight. The shot from Ted Wade to Chris Cinnamon. I know Chris Cinnamon won this race, but this is as much as Ted Wade's win as it was Chris Cinnamon's win, just because that was the difference that made the win for Chris Cinnamon happen tonight.
And Cinnamon said in his interview, the massive assist from Ted Wade to get him across the line first is a beautiful scenic shot there of the leaders going across the start-finish line for the checkered flag, and the fireworks already on display on the back straightaway near Lake Lloyd. But Ian, now we get to turn things over to a different head. Homestead of Miami Speedway will stay in the state of Florida, but Homestead is very much unlike a Daytona International Speedway. You had a narrow super speedway track filled with prestige, and now you get to a track that's a lot of multi-groove racing, a track that wears tires significantly, and also, with we now have confirmation that that race is going to be during the day, a lot of heat in the Florida sun.
Oh yeah, and grip is going to be something to watch all night long. It's a whole different animal here. You just hold it wide open at Daytona and then just file into your pack. And some of our drivers touched on it in their interviews. You got to manage the tires all race long, and not only that, you're going to have to find the best groove all around the racetrack, which is going to change from time to time. You sometimes hear Homestead referred to as Martinsville with longer straights and higher banking, and that's kind of true. You have to slow down a lot going into the corners. They're very tight, but very long straightaways as well.
And of course, you're going to be excited for that. Of course, we have a rotating cast of lead commentators, but our analyst here, Ian Fisher, he's going to be here all season long. So Ian is going to provide all of the great analysis, and Homestead is going to be the first of many in season 5 of this Triple M Pulling Truck Series for NASRA. So that concludes things here tonight from the World Center of Racing and the Triple M Pulling 250. On behalf of everybody at Racecraft TV, for Zach Johnson, Jacob Hitz on their work on the production end tonight, and for my colleague in the booth, Ian Fisher, my name is Kenneth Bueno. Saying so long, good night from Daytona, and congratulations to Chris Cinnamon, winner in the opening race of the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series. We'll see you 1 week from tonight in the Sunshine State, still at the Homestead Miami Speedway.